So two things there. Let's extrapolate. The first thing he says is that that wasn't how Minneapolis police officers are trained to use that kind of technique. The second thing we heard there was how that technique, putting your knee on someone's neck, either restricting their airway, restricting their blood supply, how that constitutes deadly force. And it's important to note, and I can tell you this, you know, I wasn't a police officer for 40 years, how that constitutes deadly force. Tactics 101, that you use only the force necessary to stop a potential threat. And that was what the witness was getting at right there, is that if you continue to apply force, that could then constitute deadly force. And of course, one thing that the prosecutor tried to get out of him was, and the defense attempted to some degree as well, if a police officer is, in the defense counsel's words, in a fight for his or her life, does anything go? Can they use whatever means necessary to take someone down? This witness said yes, but of course, as we look at that video, the now infamous video of George Floyd on the pavement, seemingly unconscious for so much of that time, I don't think any reasonable person could say that he was posing a threat to that officer. So that is going to be the hurdle that the defense attorney is going to have to overcome. And then finally, one other point that we heard today, which I hope we talk about a little bit more, is the lieutenant there said, he was asked about what the role is of a police officer. In his words, he said that they are basically, they qualify as first responders. They get basic training in CPR and the like. If a police officer arrives somewhere where someone's in distress, they're having some kind of medical issue, they render aid. Go back to that day in May here in Minneapolis where it was not only a police officer where someone was injured, the police officer was responsible for causing the injury. At least that's what has been alleged. And so the idea that this trained police officer who was there with a duty to care would not respond, again, just very devastating today for the defense here.
Ken, we really appreciate it. Thank you for breaking it down so well for all of us with that recap. I want to bring in now CNN senior legal analyst and former federal prosecutor Laura Coates, and CNN law enforcement analyst Charles Ramsey, who's the former commissioner of the Philadelphia Police Department. So, Laura, I want to start here. I mean, just your overall take, and I think Josh really laid out well there some of the key moments that we heard from Lieutenant Zimmerman. How would you characterize his time on the witness stand today?
Abigail says he's tired.
It was extraordinarily compelling and damning for the defense, Derek Chauvin. And here's why. You know, you set up over the course of time here a couple things. One, that the duty of care that was owed to somebody in the custody, they could not perform it because of an unruly crowd. Number two, they've articulated in the past that it was a reasonable use of force, and the sustained use of force was in line with police training. In this witness alone, we were able to blow these things out of the water. Number one, this lieutenant said, I just don't see why they felt threatened. You had the paramedics from yesterday talking about how, in spite of a verbally vocal crowd, they still were able to perform the duty of care owed to somebody in custody. You also have this idea of, look, an officer is able to use force. That is without question. An officer can use a reasonable amount of force. But they have a clear red line in the sand as to when it goes from a reasonable use of force to an assault. And that line is when the person is no longer resisting, they do not pose any sort of a threat, let alone deadly threat. And he said, since 1985, he has been aware of the difficulty of breathing when somebody is in a prone position and how you have to move them right away. And the defense's attempt to suggest that somehow his veteran status made him out of touch with what really happens on the streets of America was not convincing. It was institutional knowledge. It was corroborated by others. It was damning. So, Laura, I actually want to pick up on what you just said there. The defense, talking about this, as you just pointed out, we heard Josh say, you know, there was really an effort to highlight the rich experience that Lieutenant Zimmerman has. That is not the take the defense had. Take a listen.
Miss Gaskell, get that fire
When's the
quick.
last time
Miss Jones, bring in whatever blankets we have. Mr. Pearson, see what we've got in terms of food.
2018. Okay, so it's been a couple of years since you've been in a physical fight with a person.
Yes.
And would you also agree that the training that you received initially as a police officer is probably a lot different than the academy now?
I said John and Mike scouting out ahead.
Obviously, the available tools that officers have are a lot different today than they were in 85, 90, 95.
Listen.
Yes. Body cameras, they didn't exist when you first became a police officer.
Now we've had
tasers were not a thing either.
bad couple of days.
You carried a gun and some handcuffs.
I loved
kind of old school cop, right? Yes.
Jenny,
Charles, what did you make of that?
Sean, Mac, and that be okay?
Listen, things have changed since 1985. I mean, I was a rookie cop in 1971 in Chicago, and even then, we didn't train to put your knee on someone's neck, especially for a long period of time, like you saw in that video. So I don't know exactly what he was getting at. Bottom line is, the lieutenant has to get regular training in order to remain certified as police chief in Philadelphia annually. I had training that I had to go through, and I was the police commissioner at the time. So just because you're not active on the street doesn't mean you don't understand policy and you don't know what the current training is like. So, I mean, it was, in my opinion, it was not an effective strategy that he was using at all.
You know, I also found it interesting, there was also an effort, I think, to downplay his role there, right? Talk about why he was brought on, what he had to do when he got there. I think this is perhaps not true, so like, we could just play this moment. I just want to get your take on that as well.
Stay strong.
Ultimately, your role in this particular case was limited to a couple of hours of time, making sure those things were done, and until BCA agents arrived and handed off.
We ain't run into them yet.
Yes, that's correct. All right.
They both must have headed down the hill.
It was not until later that you were asked to review the body-worn cameras of the officers
really went down back there on that boat?
Consider the use of force, right? Yes.
That's what
And it would not be within your normal role or job duties to do such a use of force analysis, right?
Mr. Smith, get yourself indoors. Rest that hand.
Laura, so downplay it there. You know, it's not really your normal role, moving out, that it's sort of unusual for him to do that, but it doesn't change the fact that he was asked to take a look at that body camera footage that he was asked to weigh in. Of course it does. I mean, he's a homicide detective. Excuse me, sorry.
Exactly.
You're talking
I was going to say the same thing. He was in homicide, and any in-custody death, any death at all, someone from homicide is going to respond. And so that's why he was there. The Bureau of Criminal Apprehension does in-custody deaths, officer-involved shootings in Minneapolis. That's the way it's laid out. But that doesn't mean that homicide is still notified and respond to the scene.
There was honestly so much that happened in this week, in these 5 days of witness testimony. I'm curious, Laura, how do you think this sets us up going into week 2? Well, if you are the prosecution, you are very happy with the testimony that's come in. It's been emotional, it's been impactful. Somebody as young as 9 years old testifying. You have different vantage points. You have the ability that most prosecutors don't have, which is not only video testimony, 1,000 languages at volume 25, but you also have every single vantage point covered here, from bystanders to a 911 dispatcher to an off-duty firefighter to paramedics on the scene to responding sergeants to the scene to a lieutenant, all corroborating. I mean, imagine if you're talking about a traffic incident. You can't even find it a traffic accident. All of these people saying the light was green or the light was red. It becomes its own version of an ink blot test. And instead here, you've got corroboration in different layers. And going into now a 3-day weekend, without the defense being able to put on a case, all of this is festering in the minds of jurors who are recalling these scenes, won't let up, won't get up. And they're trying to answer that question of, what would it have taken for Derek Chauvin to just do what is so easy? Take a pulse on the neck, of the wrist, to move a knee. Why did he choose not to do so? All of these lingering thoughts are things that are going to inure to the benefit of the prosecution. But Eric, I caution everyone, manage expectations. We are still a long way from the end of trial. We're a long way from the prosecution's case, and it will come down to a battle of experts. It is an excellent point. We're happy to have the two of you as our experts every day to help walk us through this. Laura, Ramsey, thank you both. Enjoy the weekend. We'll pick it up again next week. Thank you. There's so much more to get to this hour. CDC finally releasing travel guidance for people who have been fully vaccinated. We'll share that with you ahead. Meantime, top COVID Dr. Anthony Fauci telling the country just to hold on a bit longer as more states detect new variants of this virus. And of course, as we see more people move over the Easter weekend holiday, plus new job data showing the pandemic recovery really starting to accelerate. White House Economic Advisor Jared Bernstein is standing by to unpack those new numbers with us. Meantime, sources telling CNN Republican Congressman Matt Gaetz showed nude photos of women he'd slept with to other lawmakers, even on the House floor.
Things always turn out right for that boy.
Learn from discipline.
Back and show. We're still out there somewhere too. Hey, let me take the rear. You move up. That's it. Oh.
I hear you, Pigeon Forge. It's time to visit Pigeon Forge. Plan your visit today at mypigeonforge.com.
At American Sale, we're known for having the best selection of pools, patio furniture, hot tubs, and grills. Everything you need for an outdoor fun. More importantly, it's the quality of the products we sell. And our product experts can answer any of your questions. And right now, you can save up to 50% on both of your sales tax. Or get 0% financing and get our lowest price guarantee. At American Sale, we're open, so come visit us or visit us online. American Sale, bring the fun home.
So, this house, you speak to people there already? No. Like Dutch told us, look, but don't talk to no one. Just follow the orders. You know me. Right. Not far.
I hear you, Pigeon Forge.
Not far.
Listen, it's time to visit Pigeon Forge. Plan your visit today at mypigeonforge.com.
The day after chemo might mean a trip back to the doctor's office, just for a shot. But why go back there when you can stay home? With Neulasta Onpro, strong chemo can put you at risk of serious infection. In a key study, Neulasta reduced the risk of infection from 17% to 1%, a 94% decrease. Neulasta Onpro is designed to deliver Neulasta the day after chemo and is used by most patients today.
Neulasta is for certain cancer patients receiving strong chemotherapy. Do not take Neulasta if you're allergic to it, or Neupogen, Filgrastim. An incomplete dose could increase infection risk. Ruptured spleen, sometimes fatal, as well as serious lung problems, allergic reactions, kidney injuries, and capillary leak syndrome have occurred. Report abdominal or shoulder tip pain, trouble breathing, or allergic reactions to your doctor right away. In patients with sickle cell disorders, serious, sometimes fatal crises can occur. The most common side effect is bone and muscle ache.
If you'd rather be home, ask your doctor about Neulasta Onpro. Pay no more than $5 per dose for copay card.
Millions of Americans are skipping the rinse and saving up to 20 gallons of water each time.
I'm doing more dishes than ever, but thanks to Finish Quantum, I can skip it, and it works. I used to do rinse because my mom did. Now I just scrape them up.
Even when our baby's on it, skip the rinse and your dishes always come out clean. Finish Quantum is designed to work without pre-rinsing, so you get dishes so clean they shine and save up to 20 gallons per load. Join millions of Americans and skip the rinse to save our way.
Hey, I'm Anderson Cooper. I'm excited to let you know that my digital show Full Circle is back. You can watch it every Monday, Tuesday, and Friday, 6 p.m. live, Eastern Time, or anytime on demand. And to make sure you never miss a show, you can get alerts on every episode on CNN.
You take that old shed on the left and stay low, both of them.
Excuse me. Hello? Oh, well, hello, friend. What you want? I am very sorry to disturb you. My friends and I, well, we got into some trouble up the way, lost in the storm. Ah, gentlemen.
We can't help you, mister.
I got folks dying on the trail.
We got a problem. There's a corpse right here.
No, I just need some expensive food in the or something.
I hear you. Just keep your eyes on Dutch.
And just into CNN new CDC travel guidance for people who aren't fully vaccinated. So that means, of course, it's been at least 2 weeks since your final dose of the vaccine. Let's get straight to CNN aviation correspondent Pete Muntean. This is guidance a lot of folks have been waiting on. Pete, what are we learning?
That's right, Erica. The CDC is telling people who have been vaccinated that they can travel to the rest of their
But the CDC is still not recommending travel for non-essential purposes, even still a huge development is literally absent from CDC guidance for vaccinated individuals returning out of the United States. The CDC is telling domestic travelers they do not need to self-quarantine after their trip. They also do not need to get tested for coronavirus before they after their trip. International travelers, though, still need to show proof of a negative coronavirus test to their airline before coming to the United States. All travelers, though, the CDC says, need to remain smart and vigilant, still need to wear federally mandated masks on board planes and in terminals, and still need to socially distance. Even still, it is a huge win for major airlines. Travel numbers are already riding high. 22 straight days of more than 1 million people passing through security at America's airports. 1.56 million people yesterday, just shy of the TSA pandemic record, 1.57 million people. That was set only back on Sunday. American Airlines says bookings are about 90% of pre-pandemic levels. United Airlines says it's hiring pilots now for the first time in more than a year. So this CDC guidance is really welcome news for an industry that has been struggling during the pandemic.
Yeah, it certainly has. Pete Munting with the latest for us. Pete, thank you. One of the biggest concerns for health experts right now, these fast-spreading variants. Dr. Lou Jamili is a professor and the chair of genetics at LSU Health at New Orleans School of Medicine. He's been studying these variants, and I know you've identified 28 variants alone in samples from the New Orleans area in just the last 6 months of 2020. I think by now we've all learned that viruses mutate. That's okay, but I think the real question for a lot of people is, as we're learning about these variants, that they're spreading more easily, if we talk about the one first identified in the UK, and in some cases cause more severe disease, how concerned should we be with it?
Well, think of it as a family tree. Some branches of the family tree are more successful than others. In this case, successful for a virus means infecting more or evading the immune system. There are three particularly successful, if you will, branches of the virus's family tree that are spreading. One is the so-called B117, which is the British variant. Then you've got P1, which is the Brazilian variant. And then you've got the so-called South African variant. These are all present in various parts of the United States in different numbers. And so we do have to be proactive and track their numbers and make sure that they don't cause another peak as they have in Europe.
So there are two things at play here as we're tracking their numbers. I know there's this race between vaccines and variants, but there's also a question about testing and actually understanding how much of the virus and how much of these variants are out there. Testing continues to drop. How concerned are you about that? And do you see a push for more consistent broad testing as really helping us get a handle on this?
I am concerned about this. Demand for testing is dropping. Testing numbers are dropping. And also, it must be pointed out that to identify what variant of virus one has, you don't just need to test. You need to test and then sequence the viral genome in the positive test. That's only done in a tiny fraction of cases. For example, in Louisiana, the state where I work, we've run over 6 million tests, of which 450,000 or so are positive, but only less than 1,000 have been sequenced. And this is true nationally. So we need to do a better job of staying ahead of the trend by sequencing more like 10% of the positive sample. Know where the virus's evolutionary tree is going.
Yeah, well, and I know that there's been a real push for that too. When we look at vaccinations, which are also key to getting ahead of the spread, Louisiana is now one of, I should say, more than a dozen states that's opened up vaccinations to anyone 16 and older. In your view, which groups are most critical to vaccinate right now to slow the spread?
So there are two different considerations here. The group that's most at risk from the virus in terms of severe illness and potentially fatality is older people older than 65 or people with comorbidities. For example, in our state, hospital length is longer in patients who have hypertension, chronic kidney failure, diabetes, and so on. But then you got the younger people who may not necessarily be sick, but they may be a vehicle for transmission of the virus. Ideally, we vaccinate everyone, hence the extending eligibility down to 16 years of age. The scenario that is potentially concerning is this. We only vaccinate the people at highest risk, or primarily them. The virus keeps spreading among younger people, and then it starts to wane from the vaccination.
Stop you there. I'm sorry, Doctor. Appreciate your time. I do want to go straight to Capitol Hill. Lauren Fox, our congressional correspondent, is joining us with breaking news. The Capitol on lockdown, Lauren, as I understand it, because of some sort of external security threat. What more do you know?
That's exactly right. About 10 minutes ago, over the announcement, we heard this speaker announcement saying that the Capitol was on lockdown, that we could not enter or exit any of the office buildings to the exterior because there is a situation outside. We are now learning, according to the D.C. fire spokesman, that they are responding to a reported shooting at the north barricade of the Capitol, and we're here in the Russell office building. We can see this scene just outside. We've seen multiple ambulances. You see a police presence outside. We also heard at least one helicopter overhead. Obviously, this is a developing situation up here on Capitol Hill. We have reached out to the Capitol Police, and we are waiting to get more information from Capitol Police. That is where further information we expect will come from. That is what we know in the current moment. But obviously, this all comes after that event on January 6th. There's heightened security up here on Capitol Hill. They just took down that external fence barrier just a couple of weeks ago. So obviously, everyone on heightened alert here. We are going to keep you posted on what we learn. But the scene outside, obviously, ongoing. We did see one person at least on a stretcher. That is something that I observed a couple of minutes ago, but we will keep you posted on what more we are learning up here.
Okay, so Lauren, just to touch on a couple things you said, as you noted, you were told you couldn't leave or enter. There was a shooting according to D.C. Fire at the north barricade. Give us a sense, because some of the security has come
on, Sadie.
A couple of weeks ago, put in place after the insurrection on January 6th. What is still in place, either at that area that you referenced or just in the Capitol complex in general? What of the heightened security measures are still there?
Well, there has been this external fence for several blocks around the Capitol, so you couldn't go down some of the main thoroughfares just outside of the Capitol. But what we have seen is that fence is still up when you get closer to the actual Capitol complex. That, of course, being the dome that you see. Yeah.
And Lauren, can I stop you for 1 second? We're just getting some new video in, I think, of these last few moments. So let's just take a look at this. And I'm watching it for the first time along with all you folks joining us now.
Sadie Adler.
So we can see, obviously, it's blocked off at this point. We see one ambulance, at least one ambulance there.
Mrs. Sadie Adler.
Car open, it's not clear, and
he did.
It looks like it went into the barricade. It looks like it slammed into the barricade. Or a blue car, again, comes open outside. It's not clear to us, obviously, at this point, who that car may belong to, why it had been there. Lauren, I'm not sure if you are able to see this as well. Are you able to see this video right now, Lauren?
Yeah, I'm looking at this video alongside of you as it's playing there. And yes, clearly this is an area that normally would have been fenced off a couple of weeks ago. You couldn't drive up and down this main thoroughfare just outside in between the Russell office building and the U.S. Capitol. But what you're seeing there is this blue car that looks or appears to be approaching a barricade, or perhaps it came closer to the barricade, rammed into the barricade. We don't know at this point. Obviously, we're coming to this scene after this moment happened. But, you know, a large police presence surrounding it. Obviously, again, like I said, there is heightened security up here on Capitol Hill. And there was a lot of discussion about whether it was time for that external fence to come down at all. We do know, of course, that we have National Guard as well as Capitol police officers trying to rush to the scene.
So as we're looking at this pattern, again, this is tape that we have just got in here at CNN. So we are playing that tape. These are not live pictures. Charles Ramsey is with us as well. Of course, has extensive experience in Washington, D.C. Based on what you're hearing and what you're seeing, even just in terms of the way, I'm not sure if you can see this car, the way it's slammed into that barrier. I'm just curious, your initial thoughts on what we know and what may or may not have been impacted based on the security measures that are in place today versus what was there a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, I'm not getting returned, by the way, so I can't see. But the original information that I had gotten is a possibility of police officers. I just got a text from a friend.
Dang, what the heck going on?
Police saying that they were not shot. I'm trying now to find out if there's anyone shot or if there are any injuries at all there and what took place. But this is all preliminary information. It's good to at least hear that the original information that I got is not accurate, but we'll see.
And this is, as we know, you and I have covered a number of events together that are unfolding as we're walking through them, talking through them as they're unfolding in real time. Information does change, as we know, as we learn more in the moments and even in the days that follow. Give us a sense, though, just bring us into that area, if you could, Charles. How would this normally be unfolding? What is the protocol right now, especially when you're dealing with the Capitol Police, you've got the Metro Police as well? How are they coordinating?
Well, they coordinate well, but the U.S. Capitol Police are the ones that are the primary agency on Capitol grounds. The MPD only comes there if requested by the U.S. Capitol Police. Obviously, I mean, they've got barricades set up. I'm not talking about just the fencing. That's something that is temporary and is in the process of coming down. But they have bollards and so forth. They had checkpoints where they would check anyone trying to get onto the grounds at all. And I'm not sure what took place today, but that's the normal setup. I know they still have some fencing up from, as a result of January 6th. How much is still up, I don't know. But from what I'm hearing now, it sounds like maybe a vehicle did try to get on the grounds. And whether or not there was any shooting that took place at all, I'm not sure. I'm not clear.
I'm gonna share a little information we're just getting actually from the U.S. Capitol Police tweeting out that they've been responding. A suspect is in custody, and that both officers, let's see, report that someone rammed the vehicle into two U.S. Capitol Police officers. The suspect is in custody. Both officers are injured. All three, which I would read as those officers and the suspect, have now been transported to the hospital. So we see this car, we see the tweet there from U.S. Capitol Police, and I know you can't see this right now, but if we could maybe put that video back up where we have the tight shot of that blue car. So the video will advance a little bit. Just give us a moment, folks at home, and as it zooms in, you can actually see it slamming into the barrier there. I mean, it really makes you wonder. You look at the state of that car and just the idea that a car would slam into two Capitol Police officers. Charles, I mean, that alone it makes you stop in your tracks. Where would they typically be positioned?
You tell me.
Well, they would man every entry point around the Capitol building. Now, I'm not sure exactly where this is. You say it's the north side of the building, but they would be stationed there and they would be checking every vehicle that came in. It sounds like perhaps this person rammed this car into the officers at some point in time, which is where the injuries come from. Hopefully, they're not critically injured. But the officers would be standing there and they would challenge any vehicle at all to enter the grounds. And so that apparently is place in this situation.
And when you were walking us through some of the security measures, since January 6th that have changed, some that are still in place, what is the presence like? Capitol Hill police officers, today, April 2nd, versus what you would have seen maybe on a January 5th.
Davey got shot.
Well, I mean, obviously there was a period of time where a number of officers had appeared to increase by exponential. You also had, of course, a large presence of National Guard troops. That, of course, has, started to drift off in the last couple of weeks. And like I said before, there had been this barrier where, normal cars were not driving up and down the road right near this barrier. Perhaps if you were a member of Congress, you could get through those barriers, but they were not open. That road was not open to the American public that was traveling up and down that thoroughfare. Now, this barrier in particular is close to the U.S. Capitol, and like I said, this is right where the U.S. Capitol dome is, the Capitol building, not just the office building associated with this complex. This is an area where you would have had officers checking IDs, checking to make sure that the cars were tagged and appropriately able to enter that secure area. This is an area, of course, that not just anyone can drive their car into. You have to show your ID, you have to show that your car is eligible to be within this area. And obviously it appears that what we are learning from that tweet from the U.S. Capitol Police is that U.S. Capitol Police are responding to a north barricade after a vehicle tried to access it and then ran into two U.S. CP officers. Again, like you said, the subject is in custody and both officers are injured. So obviously a critical incident here, and that's why we heard on the loudspeaker just a few minutes ago that you could not enter or exit U.S. Capitol office buildings at this time.
And again, just going back for folks who are just joining us now, the Capitol on lockdown because of a security threat. 2 officers injured. We've learned from U.S. Capitol Police they were apparently rammed by a vehicle. The suspect is in custody. Both officers are injured, we're told, have been transported to the hospital. Our Lauren Fox, who's with us now, our congressional correspondent, had also reported seeing ambulances and a helicopter outside the building. And Lauren, you said you saw one person on a stretcher as well. I also want to bring in Josh Campbell, who is with us. It doesn't feel like that long ago, of course, that the insurrection happened. I'm sure for Lauren, for you especially, it doesn't feel like that long ago. But as we're looking at everything unfolding today, Josh, I'm curious about what you're hearing. I know we have you in Minneapolis for a lot of sources that you're working at all times, and just what you're making of what we know so far this scene, Josh.
Shut up.
Yeah, you mentioned the U.S. Capitol Police obviously on high alert since that January insurrection, and they've been under the microscope because of the security posture in and around the Capitol. I think that means that those who were there, the layers that are around the United States Capitol, maybe who aren't familiar, have security personnel around the building, but you also have lookouts that are looking outward. You have a series of barrier systems, perhaps unlike anywhere we've seen in the United States around government buildings, where they're far off from the buildings. Different layers, these so-called final denial barriers that are up near close to the building as well. It looks as though this vehicle, from this image that we're looking at, made it
it's John.
Relatively close to the building. I think we can read a couple things just looking. The first thing that I always try to look at whenever we have these type of emergent situations is what is the posture of law enforcement personnel in and around the scene. And based on this footage that we're seeing from just moments ago, you don't see people running. It doesn't appear as though there's an ongoing emergent situation. So that's obviously a good thing. Obviously, until the authorities come out with the all clear, you're going to continue to see personnel there. But also, we've seen incidents in the past in and around the United States Capitol and other buildings where, for example, there was one incident where a police pursuit ended outside the Capitol, and there was an exchange between the person and law enforcement. So we don't know if this was someone who was there targeting that building. I don't see police officers, cruisers in and around that car, so it doesn't look as though this was the final part of some type of police chase. Again, there's a lot we don't know, but just kind of reading what we're seeing from this image, it does look, though, you look at that small sedan up against that barrier, and the way that hood is somewhat accordioned out, that car was traveling at some rate of speed whenever it made that contact, and you wouldn't see that kind of damage on a vehicle. So a lot we don't know about what transpired there, but we can read, at least initially from some of these images, it doesn't appear that there's some kind of ongoing lingering threat, but obviously very concerning. That building obviously remains a target to this day. That's something that we continue to see in talking with our law enforcement sources, and obviously an ongoing review into the Capitol security parameters that are in place to try to ensure that lawmakers, their staff, and members of the public in and around that building stay safe.
And Lauren, just bring us up to speed again, if you could, in terms of what you first heard and what you were told in terms of the lockdown and what that meant for everybody there complex for the U.S. Capitol.
Take a drink of that?
Yeah, I mean, just a short time ago, I was in the Durston office Senate building, and what I heard over the loudspeaker, I was trying to go back to my office in the Capitol, what I heard was this announcement basically saying that you could not they could not basically have us going in and out of the Capitol building because of a security situation outside. We also just saw a Capitol police officer coming through here right in front of me as we were doing this live shot, going out there to look at this scene. I also want to say this is the main entrance to that U.S. Capitol building, and I want to emphasize there are office buildings at the Capitol, and then there's the Capitol Dome, which is so, synonymous with the scene on Capitol Hill. That's where those chambers are. That's where the insurrection happened on January 6th, and what you are seeing is that is the main checkpoint to get to the U.S. Capitol building. It's on the corner of Constitution and Delaware, and like I was saying before, just a couple of weeks ago, you wouldn't have been able to drive up and down Constitution. That street was closed off because of that exterior fencing, and I just, I think that's important to point out to viewers at home, because obviously this is the kind of scenario that they have been really trying to prevent happening since January 6th, and obviously prior to January 6th as well. But there is heightened security on Capitol Hill. Some of that had come down just because of, there was a sense that things could move beyond January 6th and the insurrection. So a shocking moment for people on Capitol Hill. Like Josh said, I think it's important to point out that it appears that this scene, had unfolded and perhaps had been at the end. It didn't look like there was any imminent danger when I was outside, but I will tell you that there's just a sense of anxiety up here on Capitol Hill, given what we just saw a couple of months ago, and this is just a reminder that the threat is still very much in existence.
Yeah, absolutely. I can only imagine. I also want to bring in our colleague Jessica Dean, who is also there at the Capitol. Slightly different vantage point, though, that you have, Jessica. Give us a sense of what are you seeing, what are you hearing from where you're at?
Right. So what I am on the space floor of the Capitol, looking directly at the scene right now, and what I can tell you is there are dozens of first responders, law enforcement out there gathered around this scene, and as Lauren was just describing to you, this is the main entrance into the Capitol, and if you've been to the Capitol, you'll remember that there are barricades that come off the ground that will stop traffic from coming in, and what I'm looking at is that barricade that is currently to stop traffic from coming in, and on like a little hut, it's the checkpoint. There is a police car directly in front of that barricade, and there appears to be a civilian car on the other side of it. They are looking at that right now. There are a number of Capitol police vehicles out here. I'm looking at an ambulance right now, so a large law enforcement presence right in front of the Capitol where this scene is. It is taped off right now with that crime scene tape that you would typically see. But again, just a large presence. It looks like they're having kind of what looks like a meeting. Everyone's standing together and talking. All of these law enforcement officials who have gathered here. And again, as Lauren pointed out, and I think this is really important, people try to put together exactly what it looks like here. If you were to come by the Capitol not that long ago, this is where these barricades would have been in terms of the fencing. This is where the National Guard stood outside. So we do see Capitol Police, of course, responding, as well as Washington, D.C. Police, it appears. I don't want to misspeak. I am certainly looking at Capitol Police right now. We have seen officers, Erica, here inside. We're not allowed to go inside at this moment. And they are certainly as concerned about the but you're safe inside, stay inside here. That was after we have to all call to point out to our building where I necessarily on the door.
Jessica, thank you. I also want to bring in now our colleague Noah Gray, CNN producer, who's there on the scene. Noah, give us a sense of what are you able to see at this point from where you are, and give us a sense, too, if you could, where are you, so we can piece together what we're hearing from Lauren and Jessica as well.
Yeah, absolutely, Erica. So I'm here on the corner of Constitution and 4th Street Northwest. You might have my pictures of what we're seeing. The National Guard and the Capitol Police have established a perimeter. As Jessica was saying, this would have been where the barricade used to exist. These are the roadblocks here. The Capitol Police have erected, and you see the scene is getting a little bit longer here. So my colleagues are out working on a story nearby when Scott reports of this, so we responded over here. At the time, this perimeter was not being held, but we did see an active fire and police scene at the corner of what is New Jersey or Delaware and Constitution Avenue. We did see two DC fire ambulances leaving the scene, I believe transporting those two victims. Don't want to get ahead of what our reporting is and what you all have been reporting when I haven't been able to hear it, but did see a Park Police helicopter fly by. It was canceled for medical evacuation. Right now what we're seeing additional federal law enforcement officials as well as DC police detectives respond to the scene. The fire officials have mostly, the first responders, the fire department, the emergency medical resources have largely cleared the scene as those victims have been transported to local DC hospitals. Right now, it looks like the investigation is starting to beef up.
Okay, stick with me. Thank you for that. And I can, for folks who are just joining us, let me just bring you up to speed really quickly. We've just been hearing from our producer, Noah Gray, on the ground. There's some of the pictures that he has sent into us. On the left side of the screen is video that we have of that area. And if you watch, you see it zooming in right now on this blue car that looks as if it had slammed into a barricade. You see a trunk up on that car. We learned from U.S. Capitol Police that 2 Capitol Police officers were injured after being rammed by a vehicle. A suspect, according to Capitol Police, is in custody. All 3 transported to the hospital. The Capitol area on lockdown because of this external security threat. We, of course, have a number of folks who this is their office every day in terms of their jobs with us here at CNN, who've been filling us in on the different vantage points, what they're seeing. And we've been talking a lot about the fact that just a couple of weeks ago, this area where the car likely drove up would have been blocked off to vehicles, to civilian vehicles, to people driving by. Also with us right now, our CNN security correspondent, Josh Campbell, and Jonathan Wackrow, law enforcement analyst. So Jonathan, as we look at what we're seeing here, as we just heard from Noah, he's talking about how he's seeing this increase in the presence, right? So we saw initially it was Capitol Hill Police. He says, and fire was on the scene. And then we're seeing more enforcement come in. He was talking about also seeing some folks from the Metro DC Police Department. I'm not sure how much you're able to see from where you are, Jonathan, how much you can see on your television, but just give us a sense of what would be happening at this point, especially based on some of the reporting that we have and some of the pictures that we've been able to bring in about who's on scene.
Sure. So, across Washington, D.C., any type of critical asset that has the protection that the U.S. Capitol has, and I'll reference the White House and other locations like that, anytime that you have a vehicle ramming situation, it puts into motion a specific set of action steps. Why? Because at the moment, we don't know if this was a deliberate act or if this was just an errant vehicle accident. So, law enforcement is always going to err on the side of caution and put forth a more comprehensive response to any type of action that tries to infiltrate a secure perimeter. What we see here is a vehicle that actually came down a high-speed avenue of approach towards the Capitol, and the defenses work. This is why we have perimeter defenses. The anti-ramming barricade worked. It stopped. Unfortunately, in the process, 2 law enforcement officers, got injured. But again, the system worked. But what we didn't know at the moment, what we may not know right now, is was this a diversionary tactic? Was there a secondary attack potentially being planned for another location? That's why you take the action steps of locking down the U.S. Capitol, restricting movement around the campus. There's a different security posture and response from the Capitol Police. Notification will go out to all mutual aid partners, such as the DC Metro Police, other federal law enforcement entities, to get them ready to respond to this location in the event that it is a multi-pronged attack on the U.S. Capitol. Again, tensions are really high. We just started layering the defenses around the perimeter of the U.S. Capitol. But, what I've always said, I think my colleagues have always said, is that the threat hasn't gone away. So there has to be a comprehensive security program put forth at the U.S. Capitol to address these types of incidents plus coordinated attacks.
You know, to that, speaking to that point, Josh, that you were talking a short time ago about, obviously we talk about what's changed. We know what's changed since January 6th. Things have changed in the last couple of weeks, as Lauren Fox was pointing out to us, in terms of security, extra security that's been removed. But when we talk about the heightened security, it's also just, it's not just what we can see, Josh. Right? It's what we can't see that can be really important in terms of how officers and how law enforcement are responding and what they're looking for that may have changed since January 6th, Josh.
Absolutely. I mean, you mentioned these different layers of security, things that you can see, that you're supposed to see. There are physical security barriers out there. They serve the purpose of stopping threats, but also they're there for a reason. When you're in law enforcement, you want potential perpetrators to know that there are security posture parameters in place to stop these kinds of threats. But there are also things that you don't see, that cameras in and around the Capitol. There are personnel who are in charge of gathering intelligence. And obviously, after that January 6th insurrection, U.S. Capitol Police came under scrutiny for their efforts to protect that building. So that has been a major focus of them to ensure that they're one step ahead of the next threat. I will say, in law enforcement, there's this mantra that action always beats reaction. And the perpetrator, someone who is trying to do something wrong, we don't know if that's the case here, if this was someone intentionally traveling at a high rate of speed and crashed into officers in a barricade, or it could have perhaps been an accident. We don't yet know that. That would be part of the investigation. But if it turns out that this was someone trying to cause harm, they make the first move, and it's up to law enforcement to try to respond. That's just the way it is. But when we talk about these partnerships, and your question earlier about all these other agencies that will be responding, if this does turn out to be a criminal act, law enforcement will be working backwards. Where was this person from? Where was this vehicle coming from? It may have crossed multiple jurisdictions. Obviously, the District of Columbia isn't that large, and so if you have someone that was coming elsewhere, that will require federal, state, local resources to try to identify and track that person. To Jonathan's point, maybe there are other people that are out there, and so this is going to take some time in order for them to sort that out. It's too soon for us, I think, right now to draw any conclusions, but certainly this raises major concerns because of the threat that we've seen there at that building.
Absolutely, and I want to go back now to Lauren Fox, who has some new reporting for us. Lauren, what are you learning?
Well, we're getting more information about what the event was that transpired when this individual potentially ran into this barrier. What we are learning is that USCP, which is the U.S. Capitol Police, was responding to this scene after an individual rammed into their vehicle and hit two of those officers. Now, we are also getting new reporting about the fact that this individual, according to one source familiar, was brandishing a knife when they got out of this vehicle, and that was part of why they were responding to this. So obviously we're just getting more drips from our sources trying to understand what occurred at this barricade. Now, I just want to underscore once again, this is on the corner of Constitution and Delaware. Again, Constitution for weeks had been shut down. You couldn't travel up and down that main thoroughfare in Washington, D.C. So obviously over the last several weeks, some of that fencing, some of the security perimeter had been taken down because of concerns, about the fact that it potentially was time to move on from January 6th. But the concern has been that evolving threat on Capitol Hill and potentially people who wanted to do harm to the Capitol. I will keep you posted as we get more information, but that is the new detail that we are learning in the last few minutes.
So again, Lauren Fox just reporting for us. She's hearing from us very familiar. More details on what had happened. And as you can see there on the bottom of your screen, that the driver may have been brandishing a knife. Again, if you are just joining us, what you're looking at here, this video from moments ago, a car which appears to have slammed into a barrier outside the Capitol, U.S. Capitol Police, noting that two of their officers were rammed with a vehicle. A suspect is in custody, we're told. All three have been transported to the hospital. Also with us, Josh Campbell, Jonathan Wackrout. Jonathan, what we just learned from Lauren there, and again, it's so important for us to say this in these moments that are unfolding. We're all learning a lot of this together. Things can change in an investigation, obviously. This is all breaking at the moment. But those new details that Lauren was able to get for us in some of her reporting, Jonathan, that does help to start to paint a picture.
Yeah, it starts, and again, this is, you know, the moment that the officers arrive, you know, that starts the investigative process, understanding what happened here, what was the intent of this driver. Again, I think when we hear that the reporting that there's a suspect in custody, that really, you know, negates the fact that this could have been an errant vehicle accident. There was, you know, some sort of intent here for a criminal act. They didn't just, this wasn't an accident. So, okay, so now, was this a lone actor, or was this part of a coordinated event? Again, investigative resources are going to be pulled. Josh Campbell talked about this just a couple moments ago. All the federal resources are going to come together to understand, you know, and backtrack, where did this vehicle come from? Where was it going, and what was the actual intended target? Was it to just ram into this gate? If there was any type of pre-planning, pre-attack indicators that they can see, investigators are going to start looking at all the videotape. I mean, I think that one thing that we saw coming out of the January 6th, you know, insurrection was that Washington, D.C. has a significant amount of video surveillance. That's going to play a big factor in adjudicating this incident right away. Again, we're going to try to find out what was the intent of this vehicle, of the driver. You know, did they have a weapon? How were they brandishing that weapon? What was the use case of that? Were they going to try to ram into the gate and then flee on foot with the weapon? Again, a lot of unknowns here. Investigators, as we see, it may look like a lot of people are putting, you know, standing around. But this is part of the investigative process. They're looking at every you know, detail of that vehicle. They're you know, reconstructing the pathway that it entered to see anything of evidentiary value that's going to answer the question, why did this happen?
Right. I also want to bring with us, you know, we're talking about more law enforcement coming on the scene. We are told National Guard troops are there. Also with us is our law enforcement analyst, Charles Ramsey, who, of course, spent a fair amount of time in D.C. as chief of the Metropolitan Police Department there. So, Chief Ramsey, as we look at what we're seeing here, in terms of the coordination that would be happening, our CNN producer, Noah Gray, did say a short time ago he had seen Metro Police arriving. How will they play into the role? I know you said to us earlier, Capitol Police need to ask them to come on board, but they will definitely be helpful at this point. Just talk to us about how that coordination would be unfolding at this moment, if you could.
Well, I know that the chief of MPD is on scene. I just sent him a text earlier, and he responded that he was en route. I mean, what normally happened, and I kind of look back to 1998 when the two Capitol Police officers were murdered there on Capitol grounds. FBI, Secret Service, MPD, Capitol Police, I mean, everyone responded to the scene and coordinated their activities. Who does what? Who's responsible for doing what? And those are the kinds of things that are taking place now, I'm sure. You know, you've got two injured officers, you've got a suspect, as both Jonathan and Josh mentioned earlier. I can't tell the license tag on that car because the trunk is up. I was trying to catch a glimpse to kind of get an idea of at least where the car may be from. It is not uncommon to see foreign tags in Washington, D.C. from all over the country, so there's no telling where this person's from. But now they're trying to backtrack. They're trying to find out who are we dealing with here. You know, they searched the vehicle, obviously. Whether they recovered any weapons or not is uncertain. But those are the kinds of things that are taking place right now. But the Metropolitan Police Department will assist in any way possible. I'm sure they have investigators on the scene now. You've got federal investigators that are there, clearly, and you also have the U.S. Capitol Police. And, of course, the National Guard can help secure the perimeter. They'll beef up security now. They were starting to lessen it, and I'm sure they're going to beef it up. That doesn't necessarily mean the fencing goes back up, but certainly personnel-wise, they will certainly beef it up because of what just took place. And I heard Jonathan earlier, and he's absolutely right. You know, you can't discount the fact that something else could be going on. Remember, it was only last month that a person was arrested outside the vice president's residence with weapons. So there's a lot going on in Washington right now.
Yeah, it's such a good point to bring up both, what happened a couple of weeks ago, but could something else be happening at this very moment? And we also talked about the fact that there are cameras, as we learned, and I think sort of new, but you get a better sense of the extent to which there are cameras around this area, certainly after January 6th. And just sort of the thing she brings about, how that's changed, right? Based on your experience, your time in D.C., and then what we know to be the case.
January 6th. I'm sorry. Yeah, a lot has changed on January 6th, obviously. That's simply because of what took place. I don't know what they're on now, but I would guess it's still pretty hot as far as the Capitol Police goes and as far as still having some National Guard there. Now, again, the Metropolitan Police play a supporting role. Whether or not they're using any of their personnel, I really can't tell you. I don't know. But they do have good security around it. You see the bollards right now that pops up. Those things are in all the different areas around the Capitol. If anyone trying to drive on those grounds, believe me, they're going to be stopping and be searching. You cannot get on the grounds with a vehicle through any of the entrances.
And again, as you point out, we don't know exactly how many officers are on scene, who was there, but I know you said you were texting with the current chief. You said that they were on their way over there. As we look at Judge Campbell bringing you in now from a federal perspective, based on your experience of time in the FBI, let's talk about that coordination and what role they could be playing even at this moment.
Yeah, I just got a statement in from the FBI saying that they are responding to the incident at the U.S. Capitol to provide support to the U.S. Capitol Police. A very brief statement, but yet another federal resource that they're bringing to bear here to try to assist authorities at the Capitol. Now, we talked a little bit earlier, obviously the Capitol is within the jurisdiction of the U.S. Capitol Police, but you have these relationships, you have different entities there in the National Capital Region that work together hand in glove on a regular day. So when you have an emergent situation, they're certainly working with each other. Now, when it comes to what they would do, they have the immediate resources if they need forensic support, for example, and trying to process the scene, trying to process the car. That is something the FBI will bring to bear, but also looking out. If this turns out to be something else with a federal nexus, terrorism, something like that, you'll also see a greater presence there from defense.
Judge Campbell, thank you. Thanks to all of our analysts and our correspondents. Stay with us. We're going to continue to follow this breaking news. The U.S. Capitol lockdown due to external threat. We've learned from U.S. Capitol Police. 2 officers were rammed with a vehicle. They are injured. The suspect is in custody. All 3 have been taken to the hospital report, according to U.S. Capitol Police. But again, this is an unfolding story. Security is beefing up. Our reporters and producers are on the scene with all the taste of our coverage right now. Erica, thank you so much. Excellent job. And if you are just joining us here at CNN, thank you for being with me. I'm Brooke Baldwin. Let me just bring everyone up to speed as far as what is happening right this very moment on Capitol Hill. So here's what we know. It's not a lot of information. The Washington, D.C. fire spokesperson says that they are responding to how they have described as this security incident. This is on Constitution Avenue there, where there are reports that someone rammed his or her vehicle there into 2 U.S. Capitol Police officers. On top of that, we learned that the driver, whoever this person was, got out of the vehicle with a knife. We have that video now in, which appears to show exactly that. I can tell you the suspect is in custody, but at least 2 D.C. officers are injured. So we've got a lot of people helping us walk us through this breaking news, including Lauren Fox, who's a Capitol Hill reporter. She is inside the building. So Lauren, let's just start from scratch. A little while ago, you heard some sort of lockdown warning over the Capitol loudspeaker. What was happening?
Well, I had gone into the Dirksen office building, and I was trying to get back to my office in the Capitol when we initially heard over the loudspeaker this announcement that the Capitol complex was shut down. You could move between the buildings, but you could not leave or enter the building at that time. And so I walked over to the Russell office building, looked out the window, and saw something very similar to the police scene that viewers are seeing right now on their screens. What we have learned is that an individual rammed into 2 U.S. Capitol Police officers with a vehicle. Those 2 officers were injured as that happened. Then that individual, one congressional source told me, got out, brandishing a knife. This source basing that on information they are receiving from the U.S. Capitol Police. And I think that it is just important to underscore for our viewers at home that just a couple of weeks ago, this area, the corner of Constitution and Delaware, would have had security perimeter around it, meaning that no cars would have been able to move up and down that main thoroughfare. Now, it's a main thoroughfare of Washington, D.C. This was a huge disruption after the January 6th insurrection when the barriers went up over the last several weeks. That fencing has come down. The external perimeter at the Capitol had been relaxed. But this has always been a key checkpoint. This is a place where you have to show your congressional ID. Vehicles have to be tagged a certain way to make sure that they are safe to enter into that Capitol area where the dome is. Obviously, that is very close to where the House and Senate chambers are. It is a main entrance for the building, and it's an area where, you know, you see lawmakers on a Friday afternoon or Thursday afternoon when they are voting. Their drivers will drive their vehicles in. Members enter and exit the building at that place. So I think that that is really important to set the scene for our viewers at home. Now, lawmakers are on recess right now, so they aren't around Capitol Hill in the numbers that we normally would see in a normal week. But obviously, a significant security breach here on Capitol Hill. And just a few months after that January 6th insurrection, obviously anxiety still very high up here at the Capitol, as everyone was just starting to come into some kind of grasp of what the current situation might be able to be weeks and months after that insurrection.
No, it's a bit of PTSD for anyone who worked in and around those buildings. I was texting with some members, and, you know, one congresswoman was reminding me that everyone's, you know, back home in their home districts, just some limited staffers and some members are there, but, you know, everyone just, like, you know, just felt sick to their stomachs instantly seeing this news about the lockdown. Lauren, stay with me. Congressman Ro Khanna, I'd like to go to you because you happen to be one of those lone members who are actually on the Hill. You're in your car. Tell me where exactly you are and how you heard about all of this.
Brooke, I had just stepped out of my Canon office and I was going to get Chinese food, and when I came back, I got frantic calls from someone on my staff saying, get away, there's an incident, and honestly, it did bring back memories of January 6th, and I'm very grateful to the Capitol Police for what they've done. And then I talked to one of the officers, and they said,
this is something about the train they was going to run.
Everything is shut down, and so I've just been in my car. And, you know, there are members. I mean, I'm headed back to my district early next week, but there are a few people still here, and it's really sad because I had thought once the barriers were removed, we were moving back to some sense of normalcy. But this just shows the level of risk that there still is, and it's really sad that this is happening at the Capitol.
What, just, if you can elaborate more on that, because we know just recently a lot of these barriers went down, and, you know, this Capitol, your office, has apparently a massive target on its back, and what does that feel like as a member of Congress?
Well, you know, for a few weeks, coming to Congress literally was like going into a war zone. You had barbed wire fence all over, you had troops all over. I used to tell folks that if I have such a difficult time as a member of Congress getting in, what hope is there for the public to get in? And I really felt that I hope that was temporary and that we could start getting back to normalcy. What often has happened is when there is a recess because members are not here in the same numbers, I think there's less security, less troops. Different members go back to their districts at different times. And unfortunately, you know, there was a breach, and there is a sense that now simply going to work is something that has become dangerous. And I can't imagine saying it. And going to the United States Capitol to represent your constituents is actually a dangerous thing in the United States of America. It's just deeply.
Yeah, it is. Congressman, I know you're not going anywhere. You are stuck in your car until the situation changes, so we'll come back to you in just a bit. I appreciate you jumping on TV with me. Commissioner Charles Ramsey, former D.C. Metropolitan Police Chief, you are the perfect person to have in that seat as this has all been unfolding. You know, we're looking at the picture. This is the car, this blue car,
that rammed into the barricade and apparently rammed into these officers, these Capitol officers. Just explain to us what's happening right now. Obviously, it's putting off crime scene tape. What's happening?
Well, you've got a lot of things going on simultaneously right now because you've got Metropolitan Police that have responded to assist the Capitol Police. I spoke with the chief of the Metropolitan Police, so I know that they're there. You've got FBI that's responded as well. So right now they're coordinating their efforts in terms of who's doing what. They're also trying to find out more information about the driver. Since this happened, I've been trying to get a glimpse of the license tag on that car, but with the trunk up, I can't see it. But as you know, it's not unusual for, foreign tags for people from all over the country to be in Washington, D.C. So there's no telling. But right now, they're trying to find out who is that person, what's their background. They've searched the vehicle, don't know if they got any weapons or not. Remember, just a couple weeks ago, they found a guy outside the vice president's residence with firearms and so forth. So, the threat level in Washington since January 6th is pretty high right now.
We know that the suspect is in custody. What are they asking him or her?
Well, they're trying to find out what the intent was. Why were they there? What were they trying to do? It's unlikely this was an accident. Someone who just lost control of the car and slammed into the barrier. That has happened before at the Capitol. But they're trying to find out if the person is willing to talk exactly who they are, what their intent was. Now, that person may not be talking to them either. So they're doing everything they possibly can. If they have a name, I'm sure they're going through social media. They're trying to find out where that person lives. If it's out of state, I'm sure as far as the FBI goes, they've notified that field office to try to, get a warrant perhaps and go into that apartment or house or what have you. So all those things are happening right now. But this is in the very early stages. And so right now we don't know what took place. More information will certainly be coming out as time goes on. But, I remember in 1998 when I was the chief there, we had the 2 officers killed on Capitol grounds. I certainly responded there, but we had a lot of people there. We coordinated very quickly. In fact, the Metropolitan Police was actually in charge of the investigation. Unless there's a nexus to terrorism, the FBI will play more of a support role than the primary role. But all that stuff will be determined right there at the scene and figure out who's responsible for doing what.
As I'm sitting here and I'm listening to you, I'm looking at this video on loop. I don't know if this is National Guard, but members of law enforcement with their shields walking through these hallowed halls of Capitol Hill, and this is chilling. This is triggering for a lot of people who come to work here, who serve the people. This is the people's house. This is the people's government, and here we are again. Josh Campbell, former FBI. What do you make of these images, number one? And just number two, what is the role of the FBI today?
Well, first, my heart goes out to both, obviously, the officers that were there, the victims that were apparently shot by the vehicle. I know that continue to suffer from what took place on January 6th. And we were just talking about your own place of business, where you go to work every single day, is a giant and remains so. And so I know that they're certainly on edge watching this. I will say, from an analytical standpoint, every time we see an emergent situation, the first thing I try to do is look at the posture of law enforcement in and around the incident. For some of these images that we've been seeing just from moments ago, you don't see law enforcement officers rushing in. You don't see an influx of people. So that tells us that the emergent phase of this is likely over. We don't know what that going on there as far as any threats, but again, that gives us some comfort knowing that you don't see a continued infusion of emergency first responders. And the next thing, we just have to assess what it is we're dealing with here. If you have a vehicle that's traveling towards a building at a high rate of speed, that is a deadly weapon. You couple that with what we're now hearing from authorities, that the suspect then stepped out with a knife, another deadly weapon. And so we're now past the phase of maybe this being an accident, because what we've seen thus far does not fit the mold of an accident. So this is obviously something that law enforcement officers will be looking at initially as a potential criminal act, and that's why we've seen this infusion of resources. We know federal, state, local law enforcement have been arriving there on the scene. I got a statement just from the FBI a short time ago saying that they're sending in resources, and so as of this point, since it's on their Capitol grounds, U.S. Capitol Police would be running point, but you're going to see a host of resources trying to help identify who this person was, obviously to try to get to that motive as well. And then, in these types of incidents, there's almost always, not a second suspect. There often, sometimes, there is, a lot of times, but they're not going to rule anything out until they feel comfortable enough in their investigation that this lone actor did not have assistance. But that will all be part of this robust investigation. And this is going to take some time. They're going to hold that crime scene there for a period of time while they process. We saw them putting up police tape in and around that vehicle. Again, a lengthy investigation ahead of them as they try to get to the bottom of exactly what transpired. The last thing I'll say is that we know that this building has been a target of attack. It just happened in January, where obviously the insurrection there, which has now caused this major spike on the U.S. Capitol Police, on other authorities, about sharing intelligence and sharing information. We know one thing that's probably happening behind the scenes right now are these law enforcement agencies are probably looking through their own holdings, trying to determine if there is any type of potential threat, maybe something that they missed. That is a textbook. It happens in every single case. Unfortunately, in some instances, you do see that happen, but that would be happening behind the scenes right now. And then the last thing is that, we know from January 5th and 6th, this pipe bomber that we've been reporting on still has not been caught. So if people think that Washington, D.C., just because it's a seat of power, you have security cameras everywhere, that's not a panacea. So, there's a lot going into this to try to identify who this person is, but thankfully there'll be, a host of resources from different agencies trying to bring everything that they can to bear to try to get to the bottom of it.
Josh Campbell, stand by. Dana Bash will bring you in, and I was right that those were members of National Guard, and if there is anyone who knows those hallowed halls of Congress and the Capitol, we've been better than some of the younger members is you. And to see these pictures, I mean, never in a million years did we imagine that January 6th would have happened, right? To have seen National Guard and law enforcement having to respond in the way that they did, and to see it now in a slightly smaller scale 3 months later. What are your thoughts? Yeah, I mean, you're talking about it being triggering. There's no question about it. And, just for your average American to see that alert on the phone, to turn on CNN and see that there's an incident at the Capitol, it's triggering, never mind the people who are in the building. The good news in all of the buildings on the campus, the good news here, there are a couple of slivers of hope and silver linings. Number one, unlike January 6th, which the differences are very vast, but one big one is Congress isn't in session. Today is Good Friday. Congress is on the House and the Senate are on 2-week recess. And so whatever happened, whatever the motivation, if they were trying to stop work at the U.S. Capitol, then they were misguided, because there isn't anything going on the House or the Senate floor right now. The second thing is just looking at the pictures you see there on your screen, as Lauren and our other reporters on the scene have been describing, that barrier that comes up from the ground, that is standard.
We'll head up this way, find some higher ground. Been a wild few days, all right. That ride north from Blackwater, getting stuck in the storm, going out from John, that thing with the O'Driscolls. You've had a lot put on you. I wish I could have done more. I didn't mean it like that, just a lot to think back on. I still don't really know what happened on that boat. Me neither. Well, Javier told me a bit, but it sure weren't good. off on me. Ha. See some of the ground uncovered here.
Come to you in just a second, Dana. Thank you so much. Well, I'm going to loop back with you in a moment as well. Let's go to our senior justice correspondent, our chief justice correspondent, Evan Perez, hopefully with a little bit more information on these two injured officers. Do you know anything, Evan?
Yeah, look, I mean, what we're told is that this man, this person in this vehicle rammed that barrier that you see right there and exited and apparently brandished a knife. Now, the question, we know that at least two of the officers were injured. Where those injuries are, we're still trying to verify, but they were serious enough that all three were taken to the hospital. It appears that the officers responded by shooting the suspect. Again, there appear to be three people now injured, including the suspect, who all three of them were taken to the hospital. It's not clear exactly what all ensued at that point, whether he said anything, this person said anything, but it's clear that right now, if you look at the scene, the officers there are not concerned about a bomb or anything like that. Obviously, what's one of the first things that comes to mind is there something in the vehicle that's of danger? And I'm told that law enforcement has gone through it. They are satisfied that there is no additional threat from the vehicle itself. And so right now they're trying to figure out who this person is, what what brought them here. This is something that's been on everyone's mind, Brooke, after what happened on January 6th. After what happened on January 6th, law enforcement, frankly, has been concerned that people would be emboldened to try something else. Obviously, they've hardened some of the barriers. You see, at least there is still some of the fencing there. There is still National Guard. I run through that area, a lot, and you see National Guardsmen and women standing right next to the Capitol Police and Metropolitan Police that are also assisting in securing the perimeter there. And so that scene right there is one of the entry points. No matter what you do to protect that building and that campus, there always has to be an entryway, someplace for people to enter, and that'll always be a weakness for the building and for that area, and that's what this person.
All right, I see you.
I've got a follow-up question for you because this is unclear to me so far, and Dan made this great point in her three silver linings. Number two was this barricade, which we've seen if you've been in Washington, comes up, from the ground, and it seems.
Come on.
Right. Did the car, and here's the car right adjacent to the barrier, but how were the Capitol officers?
I'm trying.
They were hit. Right?
What the heck?
Slammed into these officers. I'm presuming then that they were adjacent to the barrier and were
what the heck, bro?
In the way of the car. Do you know anything more about what was happening?
Right, and that's
low.
Because again, at the beginning here, there's always So when you drive up on Constitution Avenue there,
I need to eat something, man.
If you approach on foot, like I do, sometimes just running through there, you first encounter two officers who are standing before you get to the barrier. So this person would have had to drive, and I suspect, again, these officers would have been in the way. In order to get to the barrier, you first have to go past a couple of officers and a couple of National Guards soldiers who are standing there waiting to process people. There's a way for you to go in by foot, and also the vehicle can go through. And so you cannot get through before showing that you belong there. People have
come on, man.
They have they have tags that show that you belong there. And so
it's not my time, it's my aim that sucks, bro.
So again, it's not exactly clear where these officers were injured.
Wow.
The person that emerged from the vehicle and was brandishing a knife. These officers were injured. Both officers were injured, and that's where the shooting ensued.
So you're pointing out that these officers started shooting, and Evan, hang with me, Lauren Fox, but back over to you on the Hill. So we know the suspect was shot at, and you now have an update on the suspect, him or herself. What have you learned?
Well, we are learning, colleagues at CNN and myself, hearing from sources that the suspect
Shut up, I see them, bitch. Trying to get a good shot before I even...
I just want to lay out this scene. I know we've talked about it, but I think it's important as we get more information to lay it out for our viewers.
Good God, man.
What we know at this point is this vehicle rammed into a barrier right there on the corner of Constitution and Delaware as they were headed to the Capitol Dome. That's what you see behind that barrier. In a normal day, but I want to lay out here that after that happened, that this individual, sources tell us, got out brandishing a knife. An officer shot this individual, and now we do know that that individual has died. Brianna?
It's Brooke. I know you've got a lot going on. You're good. A lot of moving parts. Thank you for reporting that.
There we go.
So confirmation that the suspect is dead according to sources and to CNN. Chief Ramsey, back over to you. How do we know definitively that this person was acting alone? How will police determine that, and how quickly?
Well, I mean, he's dead, so obviously that ends the whole speculation about being able to interview him. But they'll start backgrounding and find out more about him. If they don't, if he didn't have any they obviously have probably already fingerprinted him. They're running his prints, find out exactly who he is, and then they'll start going backwards to find out, I mean, does he have a social media page at all? Where did he live? Can they execute a search warrant? I mean, that's going to be the process now that investigators will be involved in.
Shut up. That's not my issue.
Sort of thing, because
I just suck at arrows.
The District of Columbia during the course of the investigation. I'd be surprised if it didn't. So that's what they're doing now, is trying to find out exactly what the motive was, what this person was trying to do. And hopefully, I just have to say, those two officers, I mean, I feel for the officers in the Capitol Police. They just buried one of their own not that long ago.
Right.
And now you've got two officers injured, hopefully not critically injured.
Are you injured? Nope.
Yeah, I mean, that's not good. One, I'm seeing medevac, and that's never a good sign if they have to medevac you out of a location.
I was just listening to my producer in my ear, and I hear you saying medevac, not a good sign. I'm going to read this tweet for everyone watching. This is from U.S. Capitol Police. Update, the press staging area will be at Upper Senate Park near the fountain. We're planning on a 2:45 p.m. briefing. Okay, so we're going to be briefed. We'll obviously take that live in about 20 minutes from now to learn as much as we possibly can. In
that took forever.
These early moments of a situation like this. Again, if you are just now joining us, you're looking at pictures of this blue car. Listen, we don't know much, but what we do know is that someone rammed this car into this barricade there at Delaware and Constitution, right there near the Capitol. Police tape surrounding the area now. Rammed the car, rammed into, it sounds like, 3 Capitol Police officers who wound up shooting the suspect. Suspect jumps out of the car with a knife, and as we just confirmed, the suspect is now dead. 3 officers, according to Evan Perez, are now in the hospital, and of course this is extraordinarily triggering for anyone, just any American. This is the people's government, and again, has been under attack in just 3 months since that Capitol insurrection. Jonathan Wackrow, I haven't talked to you yet, former U.S. Secret Service. You're watching all of this unfold and then hearing all these bits and pieces come out as we're covering this live. What are you thinking?
Well, listen, I've been in these situations at the White House when we had vehicles ram into the barriers, almost the exact same type of barrier structure that Dan had described earlier, is at the White House and other locations around Washington, D.C. I think what we're seeing is the Capitol Police at its finest right now. They had a heightened sense of awareness since January 6th. They saw this threat.
I sucked.
Officers that were injured, and they responded immediately. The vehicle was the primary threat. Once it hit that barricade, the suspect exited and presented the officers with a weapon, and the threat was then neutralized. They did a good job. The good guys won on this one today. The systems work. Whether it was the people, the officers that responded to the incident, the physical security barriers that have been put into place proved their value today. They absolutely worked. And the overall system, the response by all municipal aid entities responding to this location was very well coordinated. I think that we're taking a lot of lessons from January 6th, and we've rectified the deficiencies. What we probably we'll hear later on was that almost instantaneously an incident command structure was set up by the Capitol Police, and an incident commander was put into place to coordinate the responding entities coming to. That's why you didn't see today what we saw on January 6th, which was a lot of confusion. Today seemed like there was a very organized, structured response to the scene. Again, in the immediate moments, you have to render that vehicle safe, make sure that there were no explosives. Once that's done, the level of anxiety starts going down. Now you start looking at, hey, was this a diversionary tactic? Are there other multiple attackers trying to come into the Capitol? They have to try to quickly go through an investigative process to see if this is a lone actor or part of a coordinated attack. That's probably still ongoing. So
I know who my money's on in that fight.
And other key
He's weak, but that makes him much more useful. Maybe we can get to them before they get to
Naval
us.
Observatory and other around Washington, D.C. elevated their security posture in the month immediately following this incident. So again, this is a whole of law enforcement approach to addressing this issue, and I think it was done really well today. Investigation will continue on to answer the question, why did this happen and what was the intent of this individual?
Jonathan Wacko, thank you so much as always for your expertise. Before I go to Ariane, Diana, I'm going to talk to my producer live on TV. So Diana, just so I'm precise on numbers, because I heard Evan report out 3 officers in the hospital, you're telling me it's 2, correct? 2 injured officers. Okay, so it's 2 injured officers. Ariane DeVoe, you normally cover the Supreme Court for us. It's my understanding you are on the beeper line, you're on the phone, and you are the one who took these photos of this line of National Guard troops. Is this Dirksen? Where are you? Or where were you?
That's right, Brooklyn. I'm usually across the street working at the Supreme Court. Of course, everything is closed down, and I happened to come to the Dirksen building. That's an office building right adjacent to the Capitol. And I was just sitting, because I'm getting an ID here, and all of a sudden, on the overhead, I heard this warning that we have to stay in place. And what was really extraordinary is within moments, a door opens, and I'd say about 30 to 40 men and women dressed in camouflage, walking in lines, but very calmly, walked down the sidewalk, down the hallway, and then up the stairs. And then I looked, and I happened to be sitting right by sort of a command center office, and there was a lot of clearly officers kind of coming in and coming out. And then I looked up again, and probably about 5 to 7 minutes had passed, and then I saw those officers now coming back all together in the camouflage uniforms behind those shields. And what they were doing is they were coming out through the Dirksen building, again, adjacent to the Capitol, and going out. No panic, but it was clear that they've been here, right, ever since that correction, and they were moving very calmly, as you saw, through the hallways to go outside.
And as I'm mindful of the National Guard, Chief Ramsey, just back to you, of course, the Capitol insurrection, January 6th, just a couple months ago, and there was a lot of confusion and frustration over calls to the National Guard. Why aren't they getting to the Capitol sooner? And here you go. Talk about, major changes 3 months later. Bang. They're inside. How long have you been with these boys?
Yeah, and I believe they still had some actually on the grounds. I don't think they had withdrawn all of the National Guard. I don't know. But if they had, they certainly have a quick reaction force in place now, because not much time passed before you started seeing a significant presence of National Guard, which is a good thing. And I heard Jonathan earlier, and he's absolutely right. I mean, this is something that is encouraging, because at least things worked this time. I mean, the barriers worked, the officers were able to neutralize the threat, the Guard and other resources were able to get to the Capitol quickly. I mean, this is all important stuff. And granted, in light of January 6th, the threat level has been elevated, but this is the way it should be.
This is the way it should be. Let me just read for everyone. I've got a wire from Barbara Starr. She's our Pentagon correspondent just on D.C. National Guard. This is from a spokesperson. The D.C. National Guard deployed an immediate response force composed of National Guard soldiers and airmen to the Capitol complex this afternoon to support the U.S. Capitol Police. Due to operational security, we cannot discuss further details regarding the QRF. No National Guard members were injured in the incident at the Capitol. Again, a reminder, we're going to be getting a briefing from U.S. Capitol Police in about 15 minutes from now. 2 of their officers were injured as it sounds like they tried to stop that suspect from getting anywhere near the Capitol. Josh Campbell, I'm going to pop you back on TV. Talk to me about just, possible motives and how law enforcement go about determining with a suspect who's now dead, how to figure out why he or she wanted to do this.
Yeah, it's obviously the first challenge when you have a suspect who can no longer be interviewed. We'll have a that vehicle to see if they can pull any identification license plate from the VIN number, whether the suspect had some kind of identifying information in that car or on his or her person. And so that will be the first step to try to make that identification. I will say that, there's a lot we don't yet know in this early hour. A couple things that we can read into that tell us that there's no longer an emergency situation. The first is the fact that authorities are about to hold a press conference here in a short period of time. So they wouldn't do that if they were still trying to focus on some kind of threat. We also know, based on some of the footage that we've been seeing, that you don't see an emergent posture by authorities. And so that's a good thing, that we appear to be beyond that emergent phase. But when we get to the why did this happen? At first, whenever this first happened, we were asking ourselves whether this was intentional, whether this was perhaps an accident. The new piece of information that we got, that the suspect not only ran the vehicle, but then stepped out, wielding a knife, tells us that the authorities are going to be treating this as a criminal act. Someone who is involved in an accident doesn't step out with a deadly weapon. One thing I look at as well, and we do this unfortunately after so many of these violent incidents that we cover, is trying to look at what's going on at the scene. If this person's goal was to cause mass loss of life, this was not the way to go about doing it. To go toward this building that sure is a target, sure is symbolic, but is also heavily secure. You have members of the National Guard, you have obviously members of Capitol Police there that are securing it, a lot of these barrier systems that are in place, but also Congress is in recess right now. You do have some members and their staff that are there, certainly, but again, to try to get in the mindset of was the goal just intentional,
Let me jump in. Let me jump in. Because the point is, listen, we can't ever fall into the mind of this individual who did this, but the Congress isn't in session.
Arthur Morgan's first decent bit of hunting. After all
these years. And around the Capitol, for those who know Washington, D.C., you have obviously Capitol Police that are there in and around the building. When there are votes, which means when you have members of Congress that are leaving their respective House and Senate office buildings and actually going to the main chambers, you'll see a beefing up of security for the very reason you have a lot of these VIPs that are moving in and around that building. They're in recess, so even if this person wanted to cause some mass incident here, they obviously didn't do their homework, and there's a lot that we don't know about what went into that mindset. But again, what I'm trying to read into what could be the possible focus of that building, that leads me, and again we don't know, but obviously the building itself as a symbolic target, which all that represents, and we don't know what range of motivation this is across any type of political spectrum ideology. So it's too early for that. But again, it tells me that there's a lot here that investigators are going to have to work with, because there's nothing apparent from the initial indication of the very little information that we have thus far that would lead us to some clear reason why this happened today.
For the moment, Arthur, I think it's time for the train.
Want me to come?
Of course I do, but look at you.
I was always ugly, Dutch. It's just a scratch.
Don't lie still, son. Hello, Abigail. Jackie.
The boy wanted to see you, John.
He's seen me now. What's left of me? What about you?
Guess I was hoping to see a corpse.
Bide your time. You'll see plenty of them.
You're a rotten man, John Marston.
He is an idiot, Abigail. We all know it. Now, railway men. Bill, now you ride ahead and set the charge at the water tower just before the tunnel.
Ain't a problem. Why are we doing this? Weather's breaking, we could leave. I thought we was lying low.
Yeah, come on. What do you want from me, Hosea?
I just don't want any more folks to die, Dutch.
We're living, Hosea, we're living. Look at me. We're living, even you. But we need money. Everything we has in Blackwater. You fancy heading back there?
No. Listen, Dutch, I ain't trying to undermine you. I just want to stick to the plan, which was to lie low, then head back out west. Now, suddenly we're about to rob a train.
What choice have we got?
Leviticus Cornwall's no joke, Dutch.
Who is Leviticus Cornwall?
He's a big railway magnate, sugar dealer, oil man.
Well, how good for him. Sounds like he has more than enough to share.
Dutch!
Gentlemen, it is time to make something of ourselves. Get your horses ready. We have a train to rob. Everyone ready? All right, let's head out.
That has seen so much and lost and experienced so much loss recently, to have this happen now today is simply, I think, unbelievable for so many people. But here we are, and Brooke, you know, people worried about this when that fencing came down. I walk in sometimes through that entrance, and before the fencing came down, it was all there, it was barricaded. National Guard members were there, U.S. police were there, and then you go in through a security checkpoint beyond that to get into the building. So many have noted, this just recently came down. And we're now able to drive up there. So, I think for a lot of people, it's unbelievable to see this unfolding. But again, the news to take away right now is that we know that the suspect, we confirmed with sources, the suspect is dead, and that these two U.S. Capitol police officers have been injured. We're still waiting to hear on the status of them. I know you've noted this, but we are expecting to hear from Capitol Police here very soon. I'm not exactly sure what time it is, but I think around 2:45.
Exactly. But just, thinking of these two Capitol officers who are there doing their jobs, only recently having buried one of their own, and here they are, just a couple of months later, having to respond to this. Jessica, thank you. Stand by. Let's go to, she mentioned the briefing. The Capitol Police will be briefing. Reporters will take it live in a matter of minutes. Brian Todd is now on the scene near where that briefing will take place. So, Brian, tell me what you've been able to see from your vantage and what you know.
Well, Brooke, the media has been pushed about 100 or so yards away from where this incident took place. You can see it, though, over my left shoulder. I'll point to it there. And our photojournalist Josh is going to zoom in there. You see the ambulance there on Constitution Avenue. You see other police and security vehicles there. Obviously, the security posture here is very heavy at this moment. Tensions are very, very high. This unfair...
Snow, finally. Feels good, doesn't it? But we need to get this done fast. Now it's thawing, before anyone gets up here after us. Oh, look at you boys. See? This is what I call a crew. Micah Bell, Charles Smith, Arthur Morgan, Javier Escuela, and what about young Lenny here? Always the first man on his horse.
Just happy we're back at him, Dutch. You sure you're ready for this, kid? Of course I'm ready.
Just stay calm. Keep your eyes sharp. That goes for all of you. No mistakes. Not again.
So we do this, then we go back to Blackwater to collect.
How many times you gonna ask the same question, Micah?
That's a lot of damn money to leave sitting for too long.
It would be crazy to go back there now. The place will be swarming with Pinkertons.
We go back when I say we go back, and that's the end of it. Money's safe. You'll just have to trust me. And if the O'Driscolls are right, there'll be a stack of railroad bonds on this train. Good money, once we work out how to cash them. Now everyone, shut up and get your mind on the job at hand. Come on. There's the water tower. Hold up here on the ridge. Is Bill there?
Yeah.
You want to head down, see how he's getting on?
Okay.
What are you doing?
How you getting on?
Yeah. I'm okay.
You sure?
Of course.
Can I help a little?
All right. Go ahead and set up the detonator by those rocks over there.
Okay, sure.
Now just unspool the wire and then attach it to said detonator.
Okay, this is good.
All right. That should do it. You head back up to the others. I got it from here.
Just be ready to move quick. And remember the plan. All of you, no mistakes. What's going on? He says all fine.
We'll soon find out.
Everything okay? I think so. Okay, cover your faces. Train. We'll be here any minute now. Gentlemen, it's time. Good luck, all of you. You all know what to do.
Here we go. Shit! No! What? God!
Oh, you have got to be kidding me. Where did you find that moron? Who said it was fine?
My fault. Come on!
You're pathetic. You know that?
Here we go! Here we go! Oh, shit! Pull me up!
I've got you. Now stop yelling.
Oh, shit!
Yeah, you're okay. Now, let's go slow this thing down.
Where's Javier?
He fell. The others will get him. Come on, we need to stop this train.
There's another guard up ahead. You want me to take him?
Yes, you go.
Okay. Hey! Dang, we being robbed. Who's got a shot on them? Any requests for the Undertaker? Let's keep moving. Shouldn't we push up? You better get up there.
You all right?
Yeah, I'm good. What the hell was Bill doing? He had long enough to set that charge.
Well, I hooked up the wire, but we won't mention that.
We gotta hurry. We have to stop this train.
That's what we're doing, kid.
We moving up? Soon the other boys will never catch us.
I know. Just stay calm.
You got him? I ain't got a clear shot.
Shit, more guards coming out of that train car. All these bastards must be guarding something.
We need to find the back, right?
Yep, he's pushing on.
Watch out! There's some shooters up top!
That's how you want to do it? Still okay?
I think so.
Good.
Damn, he's got an arm! Who is this guy?
Doing good, kid. Where the hell are the others?
I don't know. Damn it! I thought that was all of them.
We're gonna get out of this.
Oh, I know we are. Hey! There's the other boy! Watch it! More of them ahead!
All right. Finish those sons of bitches. Good shooting, kid.
I can see now why the O'Driscolls brought so many boys up here for this.
Arthur, get over here. Come on.
two all right?
Yes, let's get the money and go.
We got some fellas holed up in this last car.
Ah, shit.
What are you boys planning on doing in there? Listen to me. We don't want to kill any of you.
Any more of you.
I give you my word, but trust me, we will.
I work for Leviticus Cornwall.
Come on, boys.
We got our orders.
Okay. You asked for it.
We ain't
5,
opening this door.
4, 3, 2, 1. Seems our friends have gone deaf. Wake them up a little. Mr. Williamson, give Mr. Morgan and Mr. Smith some dynamite. You two boys go blow that door open. Now, it don't matter too much to us, but you boys in there might want to take a step back.
Seems good enough.
Here we go.
Now light the fuse.
Unless you got a death wish, I'd step back, fellers.
All right, come on. Just walk on out here. We just want to rob your boss. Get on up there. Search that train.
Look at this place. It's like a palace.
Well, now I've seen everything. Oh, you two got the safe? I'll search the rest.
Oh, yes. Should be easy as cake. You're just gonna stand there, kid. Pour me some brandy, will ya? I'm parched.
Shut up. Me and Arthur did all the work.
Yeah, kid did good. Didn't see you rushing to jump on that train.
He's keen. I'll give you that. Okay, let's see if we can get this open.
Damn door when I say so.
Come on. Get in there. Ha! Ah. There. See? That's how it's done. Shit. Just a pile of papers.
Bonds?
I don't think so. Here. Make yourself useful. At least we all know you can read.
Give me those.
Railroad contracts, invoices, blah, blah, blah. You got anything?
Not really. Sugar imports from the Spanish West Indies. A lot of sugar. Some fancy new boat he's ordered from Europe.
I am not robbing another boat as long as I live. Have you checked all the drawers and cabinets?
This looks like something.
Come on. Let's hurry this along, boys.
Think you got him.
Nice. Thank God. Come on.
What did you find?
These bonds. They worth anything?
Oh, sure. Bearer bonds. I think we can probably sell these pretty easily. Well done. Now, would you get rid of all of this?
The train?
Yeah, get it out of here.
What about them?
What do you think?
I don't know.
It's up to you. Kill them, leave them here, take them with you on the train. Just make sure they don't send no folk after us.
Okay.
See you back at camp.
When you get back, we'll be moving on. The rest of you, let's ride! Okay, get on the train, quick, all of you. Any bright ideas, I kill all three, so behave. Come on, move! If I hear so much as a footstep from this car, you'll end up like all your friends out here.
We won't tell a soul, I swear!
Said quick!
And go help. Oh, very fast.
So, we getting out of this hellhole? We're gonna try. Weather seems stable.
And we just robbed the Leviticus Cornwall train.
We got money in our pockets. The worst is behind us, gentlemen. So the question is, where now?
I know this country a little. I told you, we should set up camp in Horseshoe Overlook near Valentine. We'll be able to hide out there, no problem, as long as we keep our noses clean.
Well, then let's go. Clean noses and everything else. Arthur, you're in that one. Bring Hosea. I know you two like to talk about the good old days and what's gone wrong with old Dutch. Lenny! Micah, get over here!
Yes, boss.
You two ride up ahead, make sure there's no surprises. We've had enough of those.
Me? With the boy?
Just go.
Come on, kid. You can buy me a whiskey.
That's what I'm talking about. Warm country, warm country.
Of this Derek Chauvin trial for murder. Derek Chauvin doesn't represent what policing is all about and what the men and women stand for. This does. The willingness to put your own life at risk to save others. That's what the profession of policing is all about. Not that guy sitting in a courtroom in Minnesota. And I hope people take a step back and realize and think about what it is that they're witnessing here today, because that's really, when it comes down to it, That's what being a police officer is really all about. And I don't know what else to say, but this is tough. It is very, very tough to go through something like this.
I appreciate you saying that, Jonathan.
We can handle it.
Yeah, I mean, listen, this is listening to Acting Chief Pittman, hold back, her emotions and just describe what was going on, and that they lost an officer was devastating. My head sank. I felt for the chief. I felt for every member of in general. This moment speaks to the persistent threats that law enforcement officers face every single day. We just talked about the Capitol Police losing an officer on January 6th. We talked about the suicides by officers after the fact. Now we're talking about another loss of an officer in the line of duty. Yet, tomorrow morning, the women and men of the Capitol Police Department are going to wake up and they're going to go and do their job again. Why? Because they're mission-driven. They're dedicated, they're good people.
Ain't that true? Everywhere.
And that is what law enforcement is around the country. Yes, there are outliers, as Chief Ramsey just indicated, what we're seeing with this trial in Minneapolis, but that's not what the essence, that's not the ethos of law enforcement is. Moments like this is where we see why we have law enforcement officers. These individuals put themselves between danger and public time and time again. I mean, this is law enforcement at its finest and at its saddest moment when we lose somebody.
This is the heartland.
As I'm listening to you so closely, I just found out House Speaker Nancy Pelosi has ordered that flags be flown over the U.S. Capitol should be flown at half staff in the wake of yet another Capitol Police officer death. Cedric Alexander, also to you with a deep background in law enforcement. Your thoughts, sir?
Well, certainly I echo the thoughts of Chuck and your other guests, and those of us who've been around the profession for a long time know that there are these challenges and these types of unfortunate incidents that occur.
That's true.
It's very painful to the police community, and it's very painful to the community at large and also to the country. So certainly our hearts and prayers go out to the officer who lost his life, and we're going to pray for the recovery of those that were injured. But let me also add that in the midst of all of this, in the hours and the days and the weeks to come, and we have a better understanding of what the motive was behind this shooting, it certainly is going to help law enforcement. It's going to help us as a nation begin to understand and prepare, hopefully defend ourselves as best we can against another attack such as this. I think so many questions come to mind, but yet so many answers are still out there to be questions to be responded to, and right now we have very few answers.
I want to come back to your point about how we best defend ourselves in a moment, but Lauren Fox, to you, our Capitol Hill reporter, you were there, you heard, some time ago, the blast on the loudspeaker, the lockdown announcement, and now here we are with a bit more detail. Still not a lot, still not understanding why this person, this suspect who is now dead, would dare do such a thing. But what else did you learn from the news conference?
Well, we obviously got a bit more detail on the fact that an officer had died, and I think that is a significant thing here on Capitol Hill. Like I said before, Brooke, this is a Capitol Hill force that is still really mourning after January 6th, still dealing with, PTSD after what many of the officers had to do in the field. They were fighting back those crowds for not just minutes, but for hours, and I think that, in the wake of that attack, you did see not just the death of an officer on that day, but then suicides afterward of 2 officers, and I think that was something that the force is really still carrying with them. I mean, I also want to point out that just a few minutes ago, we got another update from the U.S. Capitol Police that we are still not allowed to leave the building at this point. They believe that the threat has been neutralized, but we are still being asked to stay in the building at this time. I think obviously that's significant given the fact that they are still trying to investigate the perimeter around where this scene of the crime happened. And again, what happened so far as we understand it is that this vehicle rammed into a barrier at the north entrance of the U.S. Capitol. There were 2 officers who were there. This suspect then got out of the vehicle wielding a knife. Of course, that is significant detail that was reiterated reiterated in that press conference just a few minutes ago. Then an officer shot the suspect. We, of course, now know that one of the officers has died. Significant development there just a few minutes ago. Brooke?
Lauren, thank you. And Dana Bash, to you. You have covered the Hill for years and years and years. We were talking a little while ago about some of the silver linings that the barricade worked. The Congress was not in session, but still, obviously, that is now clouded by the tragic news of this Capitol officer's death. Just your thoughts on all of this?
Absolutely, Brooke. I mean, this is devastating. This is devastating. It would be devastating even if this were an incident that happened in an isolated way. If January 6th didn't happen, this would be the U.S. Capitol Police has not lost very many officers since it existed. And, you know, we've heard Chief Ramsey and others talk about the fact that when they were the head of police forces, metropolitan police forces like here in Philadelphia, it does happen. But up until January 6th, it was very rare. And so the fact that it happened at all is heartbreaking. The fact that it happened today against the backdrop and as part of the atmosphere that still exists on Capitol Hill and all throughout Washington of January 6th is just hard to wrap your mind around. I mean, you know, I don't cover Capitol Hill on a daily basis the way I did for a couple of decades, all told. But, you know, the times that I've gone up there, Brooke, you know, every single Capitol Police officer that I encountered, I just like any other reporters and people who work there, not only said thank you, but how
sorry, horsies.
About the post-traumatic stress that they're feeling, about the concern that they're still not fully equipped to handle the potential threats to the Capitol. And, you know, were they fully equipped today? Perhaps. You know, I said, and we've heard from some of our law enforcement colleagues saying that things worked the way they were supposed to. But when a law enforcement officer dies, I'm not sure that's the case. Yes, this person, you know, swore to defend the Capitol, the building, and more importantly, the people who work in it and around it. But there should be, and there generally are, procedures and processes that protect the officers as well as the people they're trying to protect. So, you know, it's just the beginning. We're going to see what happens. But, you know, this does also come as there is still, despite the fact that the big fencing that made it look like a whole war zone has come down, there is still an active discussion going on among members of Congress who are in the pertinent committees, among law enforcement in and around the Capitol, about how to best protect the Capitol long term. And this is going to be another very sad data point.
But I kept us
Dana, thank you.
kept us alive.
Aaron Perez, to you, because of course I'm mindful as we're talking about the tragedy of this death of this Capitol Police officer, there's still another officer in the hospital. Do we have any update on him?
Not that I'm aware of at this point. We know that person, they were taking two separate hospitals. Presumably that's because one of them was in more serious condition and needed to be taken to the trauma center. There are closer hospitals for you to be able to treat the injured. So perhaps that's the reason why they did it that way. But you know, at this point, we know that at least one of the officers was stabbed
I'm going to head
in
into
the
the local
incident,
town
and it's not clear,
see
you
if
know,
I can
again,
strike
whether
up a
the
little
officer
business.
that died,
Of course, Herr Strauss.
died from
Up
the
for robbing
being
banks
struck
to
by the
usury.
car, or
Seems
whether
more
they were struck by
dignified
the
somehow.
knife. That's all still obviously part of this investigation. And at this point, again, you know, though the chief there said that no terrorism is viewed right now as, or is suspected to be a part of this. I can tell you, just from talking to law enforcement officials, that they're still looking into that. They're still trying to make sure you know everything about the suspect's background. They're going, they're getting search warrants. They're going to go to this person's home. They're going to look through their devices. They're going to try to make sure that they cross out everything. As you noticed, it's very important for people to understand what happened here, the motive, and they're far from concluding there was no tie to something else here. It is strange, obviously, to be using a knife in a country where getting guns is so easy.
I have another question. It's a bigger picture question, which you're not going to totally have an answer to, but it's something that has to be on your minds. And I know you're still in contact with the law enforcement community. Like, we all witnessed what happened on January 6th, and now we've witnessed what's happened today. And how do we best protect these government buildings?
You two will be ready shortly. We put you over here.
I live in that neighborhood. The Capitol is part of my backyard.
It should be. Most of your stuff from Blackwater got saved.
People who live in the neighborhood, we view the Capitol as part of our neighborhood.
We're gonna
and so, the barbed wire fence was offensive to people who live in the neighborhood, people who live in the city, because it made you, frankly, it made you angry every day you saw it. And I think I speak for a lot of my neighbors who feel that way. And we know that it's important to protect the building, and we know it's important to protect the people who work there, and of course to protect those officers. The thing is that wherever you have an entrance, you have to have entrances for the complex because you have people who work there, thousands of people who work there.
Right.
That is always going to be a weak point because you're going to have officers who are going to come out to try to check your, whether you belong there, your identification, your vehicles. They're going to have to come out, and so they're always going to be at risk, and that's just part of the job. And so the question for lawmakers is going to be, what kind of barriers can you put in place, and also keep access, because here in the public, people come from all over the country to go to those buildings, to visit their members of Congress, to try to petition, for their issues to be heard. And look, I mean, the other thing that a lot of people don't know, especially on weekends, a lot of, I see a lot of people come by to take pictures, wedding pictures, quinceañeras, confirmation pictures. A lot of people see this building and the grounds there as part of, our national identity. And so you don't want to cut access to the building and to those grounds because of that. It's a very difficult thing because you have to improve the security, but at the same time you don't want to cut this off and turn it into a fortress.
Of course.
That is unapproachable.
Of course, anyone can appreciate the dilemma. Evan, thank you so much. Let me read this. This notice was just sent to Capitol Hill staff, so let me just read this for everyone. It reads, quote, "The external security threat located at all of the U.S. Capitol campus buildings has been neutralized, but the USCP, that's the U.S. Capitol Police, is continuing to investigate out of an abundance of caution, and there is still no entry or exit permitted at this time." So that's the latest we have from police there. Arlette signs you cover this White House. I am sure not only has, President Biden been aware of this, I imagine, the threat level around places like the White House went up for a little while. Has the president responded yet to what's happened?
Well, Brooke, we have not heard yet from President Biden about this attack at the Capitol, but the White House press secretary said that the president is aware of the incident that has taken place there. The president right now is spending the Easter weekend at Camp David. He actually left the White House. Marine One was wheeled up at 12:15 p.m., and a little less than an hour later was when that attack at the Capitol played out. So we are still waiting to hear whether the president will offer any further statement relating to this incident. We know that he is traveling with a small contingent of staff with him at Camp David, including his Deputy Chief of Staff, Bruce Reed. There's also the Chief of Staff of the National Security Council, Johannes Abraham, who is over at Camp David with him this weekend. So we're waiting to hear more about what any type of briefing has been like, or whether he will issue a statement. We are always also watching in incidents like this whether the White House will lower flags to have staff. But certainly this is something that will likely hit very close to home for President Biden. He spent 36 years serving in the Senate, walked the halls of the Senate, the buildings and the Capitol, and also visiting with these law enforcement officers who worked there. So he will certainly likely be reacting to this at some point. You'll remember that early on in
his administration, he actually he went and visited the Capitol when Officer Brian Sicknick laid in rest there after that insurrection on January 6th. So we are waiting to see how exactly the president will respond to this incident, as he has a very close personal connection to Capitol Hill.
Let us know the moment you do hear anything from the president, which of course I'm sure you will. Arlette, thank you so much for now. And Lauren Fox, let me go back over to you, covering the Capitol for us, because it's my understanding the lockdown is now lifted. Is that correct?
That's exactly right. Obviously, just a few moments ago, this announcement that the lockdown has been lifted, but I think it's just important to remember that, you know, the threat that we are all feeling up here on the Capitol when it comes to the security up here is going to continue for some time. It now means that you can, you know, move about the building, but I think that the larger concern for the Capitol Hill community, for officers, for staff that work up here, for members, I was just texting with some lawmakers who were there on January 6th, and they said that, you know, this is really stressful to watch on television. This is bringing back a lot of bad memories for members who had been in the chamber on January 6th because of the fact that, you know, you start to feel like things are starting to become safer up here on Capitol Hill. The fences start coming down. You know, the cherry blossoms are blooming around the Capitol. It's just a really beautiful time of year. I think that, you know, it's Easter weekend. A lot of people feeling very hopeful about the future. And I think that this incident just underscores the ongoing threat that exists up here on Capitol Hill. So yes, the lockdown has been lifted, but I think that there is just a collective sense of anxiety up here about where this community is going to be moving in the days and months ahead. And there's going to be a longer discussion, as Evan was saying, about how do you keep the Capitol safe, but also allow the community to continue living around here, to continue working around here. It's really a difficult balance, and something that we're going to have to be looking forward to in the future. Brooke?
You hit the nail on the head, and also just painting this just horrible juxtaposition. This is one of the most beautiful times to be in Washington, D.C. The cherry blossoms, Good Friday, Easter weekend, and yet this tragedy with this attack and yet another Capitol police officer dying. Lauren, thank you so much. And Cedric Alexander, to you, sir. Just, you know, from your law enforcement lens, I want to bring up a point that Evan Perez brought up as he's talking to his law enforcement sources, the point about the suspect with the knife. And we heard from D.C. Metropolitan Chief Conti saying this is not terror-related. But I'm curious your thoughts, because he is absolutely right. In this country, it is mighty easy to get your hands on a gun. And the fact that this suspect had a knife, do you read anything into that?
No, I think it's way too early to read anything into it, to be honest with you. We don't know what planning he may have had to went into this, whether it's sporadic, whether it was someone who was in a mental health crisis all of a sudden. I just think it's way too early to tell, but I think it's very important for us to recognize the fact that the threats are still out there.
Oh, did we just lose him? I think we just lost him. Chief Ramsey, let me go to you. Your thoughts on the knife?
Well, I mean, I think that's a good point. I mean, we don't know. Cedric's right. It is too early to tell. We don't know if the motive was to attack the Capitol, if the motive was to attack a Capitol police officer, or if this was suicide by cop. I mean,
I've never done this before.
Run into a barricade, jump out of the car with a knife as opposed to a firearm. I mean, you know, the outcome you can't expect the outcome for yourself to be that good. So, I mean, we don't know. I mean, and as Cedric said, you know, the person could be mentally ill. It's just too soon, but they'll figure it out. Or at least kind of narrow it down a bit as they start to background this individual. I mean, I don't think right now we know if it's a man or a woman. I don't know. Right. And so, yeah, there's an awful lot of work that has to be done, and hopefully the remaining officer is doing okay. This is all just so tragic.
It is, and of course we all sending prayers up both to the family who lost the officer and the family hoping to hear some positive news from the other officer who's in a different hospital. I'm wondering to you, by the way, these are live pictures, just so everyone watching, we saw a bunch of National Guard there with their shields. Big picture, Chief, you know, how do you protect the U.S. Capitol while also not having all the wired fencing for the neighbors in the Capitol Hill area? How do you thread that needle?
It's gonna be very challenging. Just personally, and I understand that people want to have the campus open and all that sort of thing. I think about the kind of fencing that's around the White House. I mean, we have to face the reality of today and take whatever steps we can. And even then, it's not a guarantee that you won't have somebody injured. I mean, I understand what Dan was saying earlier. He said, you know, because the officer died, and certainly the outcome isn't what, you know, you want to see. But the reality is, police officers sometimes die. They put themselves in harm's way. I mean, the sacrifice that they're willing to make is part of the job. And so, you know, there's no perfect way of doing it. There's going to be some stuff, bad stuff that could still happen, but they definitely could enhance the security around the building. And I hope it's a wake-up call to members of Congress to really take a hard look at the recommendations that have been made around security improvements and move forward with it, because this is essential. I mean, I was the chief of D.C. in '98 when we lost 2 Capitol police officers that were shot to death inside the Capitol, and responded immediately to the scene. And until 6 months, they had not had any deaths in the line of duty, and now they've had 2 in 3 months. And that's not counting the 2 suicides. I mean, you know, the environment has changed. It's just different, and we have to realize it.
And we don't even know the slain officer's identity, because we heard from Acting Chief Pittman that, you know, they haven't even notified the family yet. How do you how do you do that?
Well, they may have notified. I mean, it's hard to really, you know, make that kind of notification. They may have notified some family, but you have to be concerned about extended family as well. So you want to give them a chance to reach out and inform extended families so they don't find out watching CNN, for an example. They need to be able to reach out best they can. So they may have reached a spouse or a sibling or someone, you know, in terms of the family. Otherwise, I doubt if they would have announced a death of an officer at all until they've at least made one notification. But it's tough duty. There's no question about it. I mean, it's and just being with the family. I mean, their lives have changed forever today on Good Friday. You know, somebody goes to work on a day when you figure, hey, you know, it's going to be pretty much of a light day. You know, Congress isn't in session. It's somewhat of a holiday, you know, and that's the day that you wind up getting killed in the line of duty. I mean, it's just, you never know when and where.
Never a light day for a police officer in this country. Chief, thank you. Jonathan Wackrow, we're looking at these pictures and seeing, you know, some of these members of U.S. Capitol Police walking around the scene. Tell us, and we've seen National Guard troops, what's happening right now? What are they looking for?
Well, actually, they're looking for anything of evidentiary value. They're trying to figure out, you know, again, answer the question, why? What was the intent here? I mean, not only do we have the vehicle ramming into the barricade, but we have the suspect exit the vehicle armed and then lunged at the police officer, and we have another officer that's injured, you know, from that weapon. Again, law enforcement did a great job here. You know, we talked about the difference of whether or not does it make a difference, you know, a gun or a knife. From a law enforcement perspective, no, it's a threat, and they respond to the threat that's presented to them at the moment, and they neutralize that threat. So right now, law enforcement, from an investigative standpoint, they're looking at the vehicle. They're looking at any, you know, digital trace, you know, digital footprint of this suspect, whether or not she or he, you know, was tied to any groups. Again, notionally, we've discounted that there's a connection to terrorism, but, you know, was this person, you know, guided or informed by, you know, somebody else, another type of group? You know, all of that will come out through the investigative process. But right now, you know, they have to process this scene. I mean, it is an officer-involved shooting. You know, an officer has, you know, lost their life in the line of duty. You have the motor vehicle accident. You have to, you know, think about how large this crime scene is going to be to process, because the vehicle hit that at a high rate of speed, from a high-speed avenue of approach. So there's a lot of things going on here. I mean, I think when we look at sort of this relaxed posture, that doesn't mean that a lot isn't going on. There's a lot of communication and there's a lot of coordination between, the FBI, the Park Police, the Capitol Police, DC Metro. Again, the reason why we're seeing it in the state that we are is because it's a coordinated effort.
Jonathan, thank you so much, former Secret Service agent there in Washington. I just want to take a moment to reset everything what we know right now. So just a couple hours ago, according to police, it was 1:02 p.m. Eastern Time when this whole incident occurred. We learned tragically that a Capitol Police officer has died, and another Capitol Police officer is in the hospital right now being treated after this suspect hit them with their car at the northern barricade of the Capitol building. So if you know Washington, this is Constitution in Delaware, and the vehicle there in the middle of your screen, beyond that police tape, that blue car, that is the car we're talking about. We know, according to police then, that this suspect, after hitting these two officers who were posted up near that guard building, then slammed into that barricade. Once they slammed into the barricade, jumped out of the car, had a knife, and lunged at these officers, and that is when the officers pulled out their weapons and shot the suspect. And we know that the suspect did died actually at the scene. Police say they believe there is no longer an active threat on Capitol Hill. They also said in that news conference a bit ago they don't believe the incident is terror-related. So let's just replay for you what we heard last hour from the acting chief of Capitol Police.
You're my second favorite
parasite. The suspect did exit the vehicle with a knife in hand, and at that time he started to lunge toward, run aggressively toward U.S. Capitol Police Office.
Is the place now? Come on.
No, that part of the investigation is still ongoing. The scene is still being processed by Metropolitan Police Department, so we will have additional information at a later time.
Always thinking ahead, ain't you?
The investigation is ongoing. From what we can see from video at this time, I do not see the suspect wrestling with a U.S. Capitol Police officer, but when he exited the vehicle, the knife was clearly in his hand, and he did start to run toward the officers.
Maybe.
All right, so that was acting police chief Yogananda Pittman, and of course our hearts go out to not only the family of this Capitol Police officer whose life has been lost, but to the Capitol Police officer sitting in the hospital. And so let's begin this half hour with Cedric Alexander, with extraordinary law enforcement experience, and just obviously, we see these various officers on the scene, and just for people who are just now tuning in, what is happening right now, and how do they determine the motive since the suspect is dead?
Here's to your good health, sir.
Well, first thing they'll do is they're going to identify the subject, and they certainly will do a background check through a variety of different sources with support from their federal, state, local agencies. That's going to be part of this. And as we know more about who this deceased subject is, we're probably going to learn more about his history, his associations, affiliations, etc. And as that case begins to develop, and if some witnesses emerge, family members emerge, we may lay together some additional information. And there'll be some technology sources that's going to be available as well. And of course, there's going to be search warrants are going to be administered once they identify his home address, etc. But I think it's important, very much to note, and I got cut off a little bit earlier, Brooke, on this, is as this case continues to emerge on a very dreadful Good Friday, and we talk about the psychological impact and the trauma that's associated with this particular case, and what it does to American people across this country, and Capitol Police officers and police in general. We all are kind of going through this kind of post-traumatic place. And it reminds me from some years ago when I was a practicing clinical psychologist and working with police officers, how they have to endure this type of pain. And particularly think about that were there on January 6th and fought off a lot of people who did great injury and harm to a number of Capitol Police officers. Here we are again today, and we are reliving this, but not just those officers, but we as a nation. And we're going through a pandemic, and we're in the middle of a George Floyd trial. So as a nation, it is all compounding at one time. But here, let me offer this to the viewers. I think that's very important too in all of this. The literature will and does state that when we go through these types of traumas, which we are as a nation, as a community, and certainly there at the U.S. Capitol, it becomes important that we seek social supports. So for all of us in this nation, we have a responsibility at this time to make sure that we come together as a nation and really kind of console and be there for other in this very challenging and difficult time. But this is tough, and it's still going to be a lot disclosed around who this subject is in the hours, in the days to come.
No, I appreciate you so much making that point, just about everything that's been happening in the world.
Sorry, my lady.
A snapshot of this week and just the compounded collective trauma that so many people are suffering in this country. And Cedric, thank you. And Dan Abash, to you on that point. I mean, I was texting with a couple of House members and some of their staff, just reaching out to them. You know, my heart dropped. Everyone's heart dropped, right, when we first got the alert about a lockdown. And I'm just curious what you're hearing from folks. We know Congress isn't in session, but still.
Yeah, I mean, no question. People are traumatized who worked in that building, who were in that building, and, you know, they're not on right now, but our colleagues who were there on January 6th and are there again today are pushing through it and working and reporting the news, and that's what we do. And people who go to work in the Capitol, that's what they do. But it's a lot. There's no question it is a lot. And the thing that we all have to keep in mind now is, first of all, this officer who was killed and the second officer who was injured. We don't know the status of that second officer. But I just want to emphasize again that the question still is, how are members of Congress who have a very big say, frankly have control to a large extent over the Capitol Police, operations of the Capitol Police and the security in and around the Capitol, how are they going to amend that?
Thank you.
Is this going to be something that plays into the recommendations that they already have to build, higher fences? And I completely get Evan's point about the fact that this is a neighborhood.
Weren't you in
This
Blackwater
is
a
the
few
people's
weeks back?
house.
Me?
It is.
No, sir.
It
Ain't
is,
from there.
and was
Well, I
heartbreaking
definitely
to see
saw
it
you
look like
with a bunch
a
of
war
fellas.
zone, to
Me?
see it look
No.
very similar
Possible.
to the
Listen,
green zone in
buddy, come
Baghdad.
here for a minute.
I saw
If
you.
anybody,
Come here.
whether saw it on TV or
I don't
saw
like
it
this.
by covering it, as I did, and I think you did
Go
as
get
well.
the girls home. We're gonna go have a word with our
And,
friend.
there has to be a balance.
Just a word.
There has to be a balance.
Yeah.
And, yes, there wasn't a mob of people coming here, but this is a reminder that you don't need a mob. You need a person in a car with a knife to disrupt and to wreak havoc.
Yep, that's all you need. And I was talking to Congressman Ropana a bit ago, who was literally stuck in the garage on Capitol Hill, sitting in his car because he wasn't allowed to go anywhere. And he was just saying to me, we were talking about all the fencing and the razor wire, and he was saying, bro, gosh, it's so hard. It's been so hard for me to even get into the Capitol, and I'm a congressman.
Right.
And I'm just curious from your perspective, like, what are you hearing? The question
That's
is,
not good.
how do we keep our Capitol, the people's Capitol, safe, right? And what are you hearing from members as far as how much America has changed and how our security now needs to change as well?
No. I got it wrong.
The answer is, this probably won't surprise you, Brooke. There's no uniform answer. Different members have different points of view, and, it doesn't fall on party lines. You heard from Ro Connick, he is a very proud progressive, and it's not as if he wants to have, a fortress around the Capitol, and Republicans want the opposite. That's just not the case. What they have tried to do is make it threat-based.
and try to listen to the chatter to see what is necessary. That was true before January 6th, and it is even more true now. But when you have we don't know the circumstances of this individual at all. But let's just assume that it was a lone wolf. There wouldn't necessarily be chatter. It's not as if he or she was around buying up explosives or bought a firearm. It's just very, very hard to track, which makes the answer to your question so difficult. And it is going to take some time to find a way for the new normal to settle in. I was on Capitol Hill on 9/11. You could drive right up. I mean, that barrier that you're seeing on the screen right now, it didn't exist. I was able to park right next to the Capitol. You can't do that anymore post 9/11. So the question is, post January 6th, or where we are right now, how does it change further?
Key question, Dan Bash. Excellent as always. Thank you so much.
Jimmy says no, bro.
Excellent as well. Covering the Capitol for us has been there from the very beginning. I feel like I'd be remiss.
That's right, Jimmy.
Now that we're sort of on the other side of it, are you okay? How are you and your crew? Number one, and just number two, what are you hearing from members?
Well, obviously, being up here today, it's a sunny day on Capitol Hill. It's a Friday. It's Good Friday. A lot of sources are out of the office. I was focused on several other stories when I was over in the Dirksen office.
Yeah, you had no sense.
Today, but immediately, the second I started hearing the police chatter on the radios and that announcement come overhead, I started thinking about being in the Capitol on January 6th. I was in this office building when we started to hear about the insurrection, and immediately that's sort of where my mind went. And I know that that's where a lot of lawmakers' minds went. That's where a lot of staff who are still here today, even though it's a holiday coming into work, that they were thinking the same thing. I was texting with a source who was in the House chamber who said, watching this all unfold, it's stressful, right? Because there are so many memories from that day, and I think people were starting to feel like they were moving on. I do want to read for you a statement that we are getting from the majority leader here in the U.S. Senate, Chuck Schumer, obviously expressing his condolences for the fact that a U.S. Capitol police officer has died. He said in a tweet, "I'm heartbroken for the officer killed today defending our Capitol and for his family. I'm praying for the officer injured and his family. We are in their debt. We thank the Capitol Police, National Guard, and first responders for all they do to protect the Capitol and those inside." And I know so many folks who have been on air, including Dana just a few minutes ago, talked about what it's like to work up here in this building. But I think it's important to say that, we all talk to these officers every day going in and out of the building. They're around in every hallway, by the elevators. We have sort of an ongoing relationship with these folks. This is a community up here on Capitol Hill. Yes, thousands of people work here, but it is also a place where you work. But it's a small and privileged group of us that get to be in this building, in this complex every day. And I think all of our hearts go out to the officers who defend this building, and obviously the family of this officer who died today. I mean, it is a place where these lawmakers really count on the protection that they get from Capitol Police, and obviously that job clearly getting more and more dangerous given what we've seen over the last couple of months. Brooke?
And didn't I see a note a bit ago, just to that point, of it being a community and out of respect, did I see a note that the House Speaker will be lowering flags to half staff?
That's exactly right. I mean, this happened just moments after that announcement that a Capitol Police officer had died today in this incident. The House Speaker saying that she had ordered those flags to be flown at half-mast.
We're waiting here from
just down the road.
Time to go to the bathroom because this nigga don't get no pussy.
Weekend, but waiting to
how much you cost?
Ain't that a nice way to talk to a lady?
This Capitol Police Officer Warren. Thank you. Evan Perez is with us. He's our Chief Justice correspondent, and has been talking to sort of with your justice hat on, talking about your sources and questions about what's happened here on the Hill, and also just as a neighbor in the Capitol Hill community and the dilemma, right, between having a fortress around this most precious area of the country, and also feeling like a fortress if you're living in the Capitol Hill neighborhood. What are your thoughts now, Evan?
Look, I think, again, we have to know a little bit more about the motivation of the suspect.
What the hell?
To be a perfect security situation. Just because you have 535 members of Congress who need to get in and out.
Man, I only for like 5 seconds and we're in a full out brawl. Forgot about that shit.
There is always going to be a need for public access. And of course, as I mentioned, the fact that you have a neighborhood that is built around this complex.
And this big motherfucker
is part of our neighborhood, and that's also very important for people to think about. Again, I think one of the things that we're going to wait to see, the chief of the Capitol Police mentioned that at this point there is no indication of a terrorism angle. And I think that's important for the law enforcement folks to continue to look at and figure out, to make sure they cross everything off the list. And I think then you can have, within a space of a few days, perhaps you can have a conversation about what this incident tells us about where security is. At this point, it looks like, these fences are still temporary, but they're trying to figure out a way to be able to still have public access, but to secure the complex. And I think that's going to be a period of months, perhaps even years, because everything takes forever to be done here. But as you can see, these officers were in front of the barrier. That's how it is. It's going to always be that way. Before you get to the barrier, you're going to have to encounter these officers, and those officers will always be in danger.
Kevin, thank you. Let's get Member of Congress's reaction. Congressman Adriano Espaillat is with me, and welcome, sir. I'm assuming, are you back home in your home district? I know Congress is on recess, just making sure you're not in the Capitol.
Yes, bro, I'm in New York City, yes.
Okay, so you're here in New York City, and how did you first hear about this, and what was your just gut reaction?
Well, I heard from my staff because I regularly get these notices, texts and emails from the Capitol Police.
Oh, you're getting beat, you little big ass nigga. Fuck you up.
I couldn't distinguish that this was a very serious one. So perhaps there should first be a way to communicate to not just members of Congress, but to everybody that works in the Capitol complex. One level of security.
Keep that little motherfucker big ass nigga, huh?
My staffers did not get a notice in their phone, and they found out actually through the media. Contacted them. So I think that it's important that Capitol Police has the phone number of everyone that works there, and that they have access to a clear notice of any attempt to hurt any one of us, including, of course, the Capitol Police officers themselves.
When ultimately the penny dropped and you realized that this had happened, and again seeing the headlines, Capitol on lockdown, did that immediately bring you back to January 6th? What were your thoughts when you realized what was happening?
Gentlemen.
No question. It's been just about a little less than 2 months since that happened. And I sit in the committee, the Ledge Branch committee, that is looking at how to improve security there so that it doesn't happen again. And I've been very concerned about a potential next attack not being exactly the same way the first one was on January 6th. And so I've been asking for increasing sweeps for explosives, potential drone attacks, or any other types of attack, like what happens there. I mean, we don't know the details of this incident, and that could be unfortunate, a tragic death of a police officer. But what it shows is that there are people out there that want to hurt us. And so we got to do more and we got to do better.
What more do you need to do? What better do police, do law enforcement need to do? Because, in one case, it was a crowd of people in an insurrection, and today, one individual, one car, and again,
you are not cleaned up, bro.
A police officer lost his or her life. What do? How do you secure the Capitol grounds?
You need a bath.
Well, you increase the number of sweeps, as I said, for explosives. Last time around, there were 2 pipe bombs that were placed relatively within a couple of blocks of the Capitol compound. of our offices, of the Rayburn building and the Longworth building, I think you increased the funding for Capitol Police significantly. But I am really concerned that that vehicle got so close. I mean, basically a barricade away from entering the area right in front of the Senate chambers, right, where the building is. And so we got to really take a deep dive and see how this doesn't get that close. Perhaps that means opening up the perimeter of security further out. We saw how last time around on the 6 members of Congress were accosted in the airports. Maybe we should be looking at how to patrol the Union Station and the airports and expand the perimeter of security beyond what it is right now. And of course, that entails a greater resources for the Capitol Police. But just too much.
I just want to jump in because the but is, you have colleagues who don't want to feel like they're going to work in a war zone. And this is the people's house. And they do want to feel like their constituents can come visit them. What would you say to them?
Well, security should be always first. Now, I got in a cab the other day, Brooke, and the cab driver told me day one, because we had that fencing around, and they changed the way we conduct our everyday lives. And I remember back in 9/11, how there was a big effort to sort of go back to the way we lived our lives before, so that the enemy doesn't win. But security should be first and foremost. It should be paramount and a priority. We lost a police officer today. Someone, we don't know the details of it, but obviously they went there to attack. They came out with a knife. And so it can't get that close. I don't have all the answers because I'm not a security expert, but I know that we got to give more resources to the Capitol Police so they address this in a way that everyone, including, by the way, our staff, my staff was in the building, in one of the office buildings, including to make sure that they're secure.
Jim Boy Calloway.
Do you feel like, so we're looking at this blue car, and this is what the suspect was driving when he rammed into the officers and ultimately rammed into this barricade. Congressman, this barricade didn't exist pre-9/11. You brought up 9/11 as really this delineation line in our country in terms of all of our lives changed, right? When it came to how we get on planes, we can get to the U.S. Capitol. Do you feel like January 6th and now April 2nd is sort of like the next delineation line in America?
Either I'd kill him
I don't mind changing some things that will not prevent from us exercising our democratic rights and ability to access government, but that will secure the people that work there. And that may mean some changes, and we will have to get used to it. Yes, I remember back in 9/11 how uncomfortable it was to go through an airport. But guess what? We're now used to it, and it's part of everyday life, and it makes people secure. I feel better when someone is going through a metal detector and going and getting on a plane with me. Although it may be uncomfortable, it could save somebody's life. And I think we got to take those tough measures to ensure that the police officers there are safe, and that the people that work with us are also safe. And yes, there should be access to government, but safety should be first.
Really, just my last question, Congressman Espaillat, is about this U.S. Capitol Police community, losing one of their own, Ryan Sicknick, in the wake of the insurrection, several, just with the heaviness of with so many officers being attacked.
Black Bell
committed suicide since, and now we have another officer losing his or her life. Just do you have thoughts, a message to this community?
I don't have words to express how thankful I am of those police officers that are there and put their lives on the line every single day so that we can be safe. I know that on January 6th I spoke to some of them. I know many of them. They're friends of ours. They speak to us. They're nice people, and they take care of us. And I have no words to express how grateful I am, and I'm sure all the members of Congress are, and our staff, to their security. Our heart goes to them, and we must do better for them and their safety.
Congressman, I appreciate you so much. Thank you for jumping on TV with me and just talking through what we have all been covering live these last couple of hours. Thank you, sir. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
What are you doing?
And I have a few minutes left before we turn things over to Jake in Washington. Cedric Alexander, your thoughts here as we've been covering this for 2 hours now, and just your thoughts as we move forward and think about security around the Capitol.
Well, as a nation, let's on this Good Friday, first of all of us offer our condolences to the officer who lost his life today. But very important for us, I think, as a nation in all of this, is that we allow ourselves some opportunity and allow our leaders there in Washington, D.C., particularly those in the law enforcement community, to gain more information as to who this subject is, what was the motive, and what is it possibly that we can do going forward to help avert these types of attacks. But I think here again, we're at a place in this nation where we all have to be aware of our surroundings. We have to be alert.
Being aggressive around these parts.
Very challenging and difficult time. But I think it's important just for all of us as Americans to move through this together and not allow ourselves to be separated. But to really come together, because here again, this is a very traumatic day for everyone leading up to this Easter weekend, and my hearts and prayers go out to all those that are involved, particularly those that are in pain at this moment, and that's quite frank us as a nation.
Do you think, just a quick follow-up, I was talking to the congressman, everything changed after September 11th, 2001. Do you think that this is now a new delineation moment in this country when it comes to security?
Well, I think we're at this crossroads where we're going to have to think about security in a very different way. Certainly we got to utilize all the modern technology that is out there, and we have to make sure we have men and women who are trained to do the job and to do it well and with integrity. But most important out of all of that, no matter how much technology that we have, it always comes back to the human element. And the human element of it all is that we have to be
$4, good Lord, that's a lot of money.
In a public safety in which police and community, as you often hear me say, must work together. And this is one of those moments right now, at this very moment, where we have to come together, be supportive of our law enforcement, be supportive of our communities as we all mourn this death, as we go through this very challenging time with COVID, with a trial that is being broadcast around the globe, and of course, the loss of life here today.
Cedric Alexander, thank you so very much.
Thank you.
Commissioner Charles Ramsey, to you, just your final thoughts on what we've been discussing.
Well, right now, my thoughts are with the family of the officer killed in the line of duty, but also all the men and women of the U.S. Capitol Police for what they're going through right now, and that includes Chief Pittman. I mean, I listened to her when she, during the press announcement, and I could hear the trauma in her voice, and I know exactly what it is she's going through right now. You know, I retired January of 2016, but I made up my mind that I was going to retire on March 5th of 2015, and that's when the 8th officer in Philadelphia, during my tenure as commissioner, was shot and killed in the line of duty. I simply couldn't bury another police officer, and I knew it. I just couldn't do it, and I knew it was time for me to move on. So I understand just how hard it is for everybody. You just don't bounce back from something like that. It builds up. It's inside you. I just hope they have access to mental health treatment, because this is something that we have to take very, very seriously. And cops have a tendency to, want to try to tough it out. That's a mistake. That is a huge mistake, and we've got to be able to provide the kind of support for them that they're going to need to have. And that's not, right now we're talking about the Capitol, but that's the men and women of policing throughout the United States. It's a tough job. It takes its toll. And if we don't take care of the well-being, the mental health and the well-being of our officers, then, we're really missing the mark.
Commissioner Ramsey, I appreciate you so much, and all of your thought and your heart and your expertise. Thank you so very much. And we've got about a minute left. Jonathan Wackrow, do you want to close us out? Jonathan Wackrow,
listen, I want to...
60 seconds,
I'll keep with the theme here. Anytime we have a crisis situation, individuals have a physiological and psychological effect to the stress that it causes. And what we have to do is, we have to break down any cultural stigmas there are for asking for help. We've gone through a lot of trauma as a country. Law enforcement, the Capitol Police has gone through a lot of trauma. Reaching out, asking for help, getting help, is essential right now to start the healing process. Then we can do everything else. But first and foremost, we have to make sure that we're taking care of ourselves and that there is availability of help everywhere. Reach out, get it.
Appreciate that so much, Jonathan Wacko. Thank you. Pictures there, Washington, D.C. We're going to continue the coverage with my colleague, Jay Tapper. I've been with me these last 2 hours. Special coverage continues on the lead with Jay Tapper.
Man!
Second time in just 3 months, the flags at the U.S. Capitol are being lowered to half-staff because of an attack on the Capitol, one that resulted in the loss of a police officer's life. One Capitol police officer is dead, another is injured after police say a man rammed his car into them this afternoon before crashing into a barricade just outside.
At least I got my horse.
The man then got out of his car with a knife and ran.
No.
And killed him. The Washington, D.C. Police Chief Robert Conti says this does not appear to be terrorist-related, and the head of Capitol Police says the suspect was not known to them prior to this incident.
At approximately 1:02 hours this afternoon, a suspect entered what we refer to as the north barricade of the Capitol. The suspect rammed his car into 2 of our officers and then hit the north barricade barrier. At such time, the suspect exited the vehicle with a knife in hand. Our officers then engaged that suspect. He did not respond to verbal commands. The suspect did start lunging toward U.S. Capitol Police officers, at which time U.S. Capitol Police officers fired upon the suspect. At this time, the suspect has been pronounced deceased. 2 U.S. Capitol Police officers were transported to 2 different hospitals, and it is with a very, very heavy heart that I announce one of our officers has succumbed to his injuries. I just ask that the public continue to keep U.S. Capitol Police and their families in your prayers. This has been an extremely difficult time for U.S. Capitol Police after the events of January 6th and now the events that have occurred here today. So I ask that you keep our U.S. Capitol Police family in your thoughts and prayers.
I would remind you that 1 officer was killed and 2 others committed suicide after the January 6th event. And that the area where this happened would have been fenced off just a few weeks ago in the aftermath of the January 6th insurrection. Police officials have not released any names yet, you should know. The suspect's name, the injured officer's name, or the officer who was killed. Regarding the latter, police said they still have yet to notify his or her next of kin. CNN's Whitney Wild is near the scene where the car remains smashed against the barrier.
Nope.
Whitney, what's the latest that you're hearing in the
There has been much written about
Well, what we learn now is basically what we had heard from police a little bit ago, which is, again, that one of those officers lost in this another horrific attack here at the Capitol. And I think you pointed out something that's really important. 3 officers from this
I want a cookie? So have I. And I'm a girl.
Don't see in a year, in a decade, and so this department remains in battle. This is going to be just one more in a series of traumatic incidents that this department has had to go through and is learning how to heal. If you just look over my shoulder behind me, just behind this special operations vehicle is the actual suspect vehicle. We didn't get a good look at the make and model, but what I can tell you, Jake, is that it looked like it was a sedan. It looked like, from my vantage point, a four-door navy blue sedan. We don't know where this vehicle came in from. We don't know who the driver was. We don't know the motivation. And Metropolitan Police Chief Conti said that he does not believe, as you had mentioned, he doesn't believe that this is a terrorist threat. He doesn't believe that there's an ongoing threat to the community at this point. And then, importantly, he doesn't believe that this person was known to law enforcement prior to this incident. And I think that's important because a lot of the conversation here up on Capitol Hill has been about the intelligence flow, how to change the intelligence flow to get a better handle on threats. This case, again, Chief Conti saying that it does not appear at this point that this person was known to
I could just rob you. What the hell?
Happened hours ago, so we'll certainly learn more as the situation unfolds and we learn who was actually behind the wheel. Jake.
All right, thank you so much. CNN's Pete Montine is outside George Washington University Hospital in Washington, D.C. for us, where a source tells us one of the officers was taken following the incident. Pete, tell us more.
Well, Jake, what a sad moment here. Just a few moments ago, when it appeared that a procession for that fallen officer left GW Hospital here and went southbound on 23rd Street. If you're familiar with Washington, we're not too far away from DuPont Circle. Police car after police car, police on motorcycles, Secret Service, Capitol Police, Metropolitan Washington Police, all a part of that procession as it left here. A really sad moment, almost not a dry eye here. There were hospital employees lined up on the paddock here just outside of the emergency room. And it did appear that this spot also maybe became a bit of part of this crime investigation. There was a Capitol Police car in the front bay here, in front of the emergency room, where MPD detectives were taking photos. They were inspecting it. They were trying to make sure there was something clearly going on there. We're not able to say for certain exactly what just yet, but there was a procession here not all that long ago, and we are told that that slain officer was brought to George Washington University Hospital, where I am right now, Jake.
Really, really tough time for the Metropolitan and Capitol Police Departments. Pete Montine, thank you so much. CNN's Evan Perez has been talking to his sources. Evan, what are you learning? Obviously, the investigation is just in the preliminary phase as of right now.
It really is, Jake. And one of the things that is notable that we're told is that this suspect managed to, despite all the security there, despite all the precautions, managed to be able to stab one of these officers, managed to get close enough to be able to stab one of these officers. And it appears that one of these officers was so badly injured that they were taken by police cruiser to the hospital. That gives you a sense that they didn't even wait for the ambulance to be able to get there. The other two people who were injured, one of the police officers, the suspect, were taken by EMS to the hospital. But in the case of the officer, they put him in a cruiser and took him to the hospital. That appears to be the cruiser that Pete Montine was talking about. And at this point, Jake, as the chief of police, acting chief of the Metropolitan Police said, they don't believe that there's anything that indicates a terrorist nexus, but it is still something, I'm told by law enforcement, that they're still looking into. They're at this point getting search warrants. They're going to look through the person's home to try to see whether there's anything there that indicates a motivation. It is still something, it's still very early, as you said, in this investigation. And again, one of the things that they want to make sure is they want to understand mental health issues, whether there's any connection with any terrorist groups. All of those things are still being investigated at this point.
Yeah, and Evan, one of the things I think probably some viewers are wondering, how could it not be terrorism if somebody is attacking the Capitol? And one of the things that people like you and I who have lived in this town for a long time and covered it know is sometimes there is definitely a political agenda for somebody who is committing violence, whether it's religious violence or political violence, whatever. And sometimes Washington, D.C., whether the White House and people trying to hop the fence or people attacking the Capitol. There was an incident a few years ago with a woman ramming her car into a barrier, I recall. Sometimes, because this is the nation's capital and these are high-profile buildings, and high-profile individuals in those buildings, they attract people who are suffering from serious problems.
Exactly, and frankly, Jake, because of what we saw and what happened on January 6th, one of the things I've heard repeatedly from law enforcement people is that the concern was that because people out there could see what a bunch of people were able to do, get into those barriers, get into the building, take it over, that it would embolden, it would serve as some sort of trigger for people to try to do something on their own. And that goes from terrorist groups that are well known to people who are just sitting at home and maybe suffering some of their own issues to try to do something like this. Again, that's one of the parts of this investigation at this point, to try to understand whether that's the case. But it is a top concern. It doesn't matter what you do to try to harden the exterior of this place. There's always going to be a risk that someone will be able to breach something like that. And as you see, a barrier is right there. They weren't able to get through, but they were able to take the life of at least one officer.
And Evan, do we know the officer who was killed? Do we know if that was because of the car ramming into him or her, or do we know if it had to do with the stabbing?
With the stabbing, right. It's not clear to me, Jake. Again, this is the question we're asking, and there's a lot of conflicting information that's emerging at this point. But yeah, that is one of the questions I have, and we don't know whether the officers that were struck by the vehicle before getting to the barrier, or whether that's the reason for the officer's death, or whether it's the stabbing. But it tells you, it is indicative, I think, of the urgency of the situation, that officers did not wait. Look, I live in that neighborhood, so we heard a helicopter go towards there, and clearly they're rushing everything they could, the assets they could, to try to get people out there. And they didn't even wait for that. They got him in the cruiser and took him away to the hospital, which appears to be the George Washington Hospital, the closest hospital they could get to by car. And so they didn't even wait for the EMS. They took him by cruiser.
All right, Evan, Perez, thanks so much. We'll come back to you when you learn more. Appreciate it. CNN's Jessica Dean was actually inside the Capitol when all of this unfolded. She covers Capitol Hill for us. Jessica, tell us what the situation is like now.
What are you doing?
Well, right now, Jake, the lockdown has been lifted, so we can now come inside and outside. But when this all began earlier today, I was sitting in my office. It's in this building, the Senate side of the Capitol, right here behind us. And we heard an announcement blare over the loudspeaker. We have a clip of it. I'll let you all listen.
University will hire me because unlike them, I actually have ideas.
Girl, what?
I study dinosaurs.
Duh.
Big lizards. Of course they're real, you peekaboo. And everywhere.
And that was the moment we knew that we were in lockdown, of course, telling us to stay away from doors and windows. And what is important to note is the Senate and House are both on recess right now, and Fridays are sometimes Sundays here anyway. It was eerily quiet, Jake, when I went out to kind of look around and see what was going on. You could have heard a pin drop, but clearly something serious was possibly going on. I came down to the first floor. I heard radios going from the U.S. Capitol Police, and that's when we started to piece together a little bit of what was going on. A lot of people, though, weren't working here. A lot of the sources I was checking in with today were working from home because it is recess, because it is Friday. But we looked right over and you could see the scene here behind us. And I was standing with some Capitol Police officers, and even they weren't quite sure exactly at that moment precisely what was happening. But as so many others have noted, they have suffered such great loss this year. And I walk through that door sometimes through that way to go in, and they're there to protect us, and they take that very, very seriously. And so they had very heavy hearts. There is certainly just this cloud of heaviness and sadness that is wafting through that building right now. You walk by right now to come out. I walk by Capitol Police officers, members of the National Guard, and you can just tell their hearts are incredibly heavy, as all of ours are. And Jake, they have done a lot since January 6th to try to stem this, to try to protect against anything happening like this. They have increased and changed the way that they...
America was beautiful. Goodness.
Of course, they did put up the fencing and have the National Guard here after that. That fencing a lot of that fencing just came down in the last couple of weeks, and it was noticeable here how much more open it felt. Where this goes from here is the big question right now on Capitol Hill, frankly, Jake. The question is, will more fencing go back up? Does the posture change? These are some of the questions that are being asked to people. People are talking about that when I'm asking them what comes next. But overall, Jake, just incredibly heavy hearts here. Just a devastating day.
Yeah, no, a horrible day, as you know, for the U.S. Capitol Police. They lost Officer Brian Sicknick because of the January 6th insurrection. They lost another officer who died by suicide in the days after that because of the trauma. Now they've lost a third officer. This is within 3 months for a relatively small police force. Really horrific, and they do so much to keep members of Congress and their
We don't like O'Driscoll's out of these parts.
Safe from any danger. Just a horrible day. Thank you so much. Let's go to CNN's Lauren Fox, who's also on the Hill. Lauren, how are lawmakers reacting to this incident? A lot of them had real post-traumatic stress after the January 6th insurrection, where several of them were very credibly fearing for their lives, fearing violence against them. How are they reacting today?
Yeah, I mean, I've been texting with several members, some of whom were in the House chamber on January 6th, you know, to talk a little bit about what do you feel like watching all of these events unfolding on Capitol Hill. And, you know, one source told me that this was just depressing. This was upsetting what they were seeing at the Capitol, given what this complex has been through, what this community has been through over the last several months. And, you know, we are getting some more formal reaction from lawmakers, many of whom are on this congressional recess over the last week, and they'll continue to be next week. But I want to read one tweet from the Majority Leader, Chuck Schumer. He said, "I'm heartbroken for the officer killed today, defending our Capitol, and for his family. I'm praying for the officer injured and for his family. We are in their debt. We thank the Capitol Police, National Guard, and first responders for all they do to protect the Capitol and those inside." And of course, these outpourings are coming from across the aisle as well. I want to read another tweet from Liz Cheney, the Republican conference chairwoman. She says, quote, "Our deepest condolences to the family of Capitol Police officer who was killed defending our Capitol. U.S. Capitol Police put their lives on the line to protect us and our republic. They deserve our unwavering support." And Jessica brought up such an important point, Jake. These Capitol Police officers are really part of this complex in so many ways. You know, when you go in and out of this building, you say hi to them, you go through security, you sort of build a rapport and a relationship with them. Obviously, this force has been through so much over the last several months, and of course this incident today, but also the fact that many of them were on the front lines on January 6th, many of them fighting not just for minutes but for hours for their lives and for this building and for this place and what it represents on January 6th. So obviously just everyone's hearts pouring out to the officer who passed away and their family. It's just a horrendously sad day, Jake.
A very sad day. Thank you so much. Let's discuss what's going on with our law enforcement experts. First of all, let me start with you, Julia Cayenne, if I can. The FBI says they're responding to this incident to provide support to the Capitol Police, but D.C. police are taking the lead in investigating. That's the Metropolitan Police Department, or MPD. What do you think MPD is doing right now? What clues are they going to be looking for? I mean, they obviously, the suspect is dead, so they know who did it. Where do you go from there?
Can we play?
Yeah, and this may be confusing to the public because they said, we don't know what the motive is, but we know we don't think it's terrorism. And basically what that means is that they will announce relatively soon who the suspect is. They would know who he is because they had him, he was dead. And then they will, and then they determined almost immediately, was he under any watch list, either international or domestic. So in that way, they were at least able to make two claims. One was that there's no continuing threat, and then something that they did about a half hour later, which is they reopened up the Capitol. And for someone like me who looks at this from afar, that was the sign, at least in my mind, that they feel like they have a discrete threat that is obviously been stopped. So now it's going to look like a normal, as normal one could call this investigation, which is it's going to be, you know, who is he? What did he have online? Mental issues? Was he known to, wherever he's from, was he known to individuals there or law enforcement there for certain behavior? So this will unfold like a normal investigation. However, abnormal it seemed at the moment it was happening because it seemed very familiar to the attack a couple months ago. So sometimes things that seem too good to be a coincidence, right? This is why we have to reserve judgment about anything in particular motivation and just wait for the information to be disclosed.
And we see that the U.S. Capitol Police have put out a statement with a photograph of the officer who was killed. His name was William Billy Evans. Officer Billy Evans. We'll put up that photograph in a second. Phil Mudd, D.C. police say they do not think this is terrorism related. How can that determination be made so quickly?
Boy, I think they're right, and I can explain for a moment why. I would say that's a bit quick. Let me give you a couple reasons why. If this individual acted alone, to determine whether it's terrorism or not, you got to get inside their head. If they acted alone, the likelihood they're communicating about motives with other people is low. To get inside their head, I need to understand what's on their laptop, what's on their phone, and to do interviews of, for example, friends, family, co-workers to understand their mindset. Based on what I've seen of the case, I would tend to agree with them, but as an analyst behind the scenes, Jake, there is still a lot of work to be done. I think they're right. I wouldn't guarantee it yet.
I want to show the photograph I just told you moments ago. The Capitol Police released a statement mourning the officer who was killed, and this photograph of Officer Billy Evans, William F. Evans, the acting police chief, saying, quote, "It is with profound sadness that I share the news of the passing of Officer William Billy Evans this afternoon from injuries he sustained following an attack at the North Barricade by a lone assailant. Officer Evans had been a member of the United States Capitol Police for 18 years. He began his U.S. Capitol Police service on March 7th, 2003, was a member of the Capitol Division's First Responders Unit. Please keep Officer Evans and his family in your thoughts and prayers. An 18-year veteran, Officer Billy Evans, that's his picture right there, killed. There's no reason for it. Killed in the line of duty today because somebody attacked the Capitol. Let me go to Reddit Hudson if I can right now, bring him in. And Reddit, as a police veteran,
sure is.
This is a really bad era, as I don't need to tell you, for the U.S. Capitol Police. The third officer taken from them. One killed in the insurrection, one died by suicide
Parasite motherfucker, bro.
Officer Billy Evans killed. What is that like for police when that happens?
It's all right to give up, friend.
Well, it's like it is for anybody else. I mean, if you are working with someone, you've built a relationship with someone, they're your friend, you're devastated when they lose their life this way or any other way. It really, to me, speaks to why it is so critical at this point to hold people accountable, especially the people responsible for the insurrection on January the 6th. I don't know all the details of this case yet today. I know they're still coming in, but we do know that the Capitol was previously attacked in recent weeks and months, and it is imperative that those people be prosecuted to the full extent of the law to send a message to future attackers that you will be held accountable for your actions. I mean, I'm sure that the Capitol Police are devastated by this loss.
Yeah, just awful. Evan Perez now has some breaking news on the identity of the suspect. Evan, tell us what you're learning.
Well, Jake, we're told by sources, multiple sources, that the suspect's name is Noah Green. At least one of those sources says that he's 25 years old. We know that at this time, Jake, the law enforcement, the police investigators are working to learn more about him, trying to figure out what motivation was behind this attack. Noah Green, they right now are getting search warrants to try to search his home, talk to family members. We have teams on the way to try to get to those locations at this point. But obviously, there's still much work to be done here. Just touching on your conversation just a minute ago with Phil, even though the police initially said that they don't believe there's any terrorism motivation at this point, they still have a lot more work to do. And one of those things, what's going to come from these searches is perhaps some answers based on what they find at the suspect's home, talking to family members, what perhaps his mindset was in recent days, what perhaps drove him to take this action today.
Let's bring back our law enforcement panel as we know the identity. Noah Green is his name. He one federal source telling our team that he's 25.
You're one lucky son
still
of a
obviously
bitch, you know
learning
that?
a lot more
sure
about
son of a bitch.
this
Lucky?
person. Law enforcement
I ain't so sure.
panel, take a listen to what the
Come on, you.
Metropolitan Police
Let's
Chief,
move
that's
along.
the DC Police Chief, said about the attack.
Where's it?
The suspect did exit the vehicle with a knife in hand, and at that time he started to lunge toward, run aggressively toward U.S. Capitol Police officers.
That's the actually the acting Capitol Police officer, not the MPD police officer.
Me, I'm sorry.
But let me ask you, Julia Cam, when the suspect is running at a police officer with a knife, I believe it's protocol that they have no choice but to shoot, and this isn't the movies. You don't shoot somebody's arm, you don't shoot a knife out of somebody's hand, you shoot the body mass, which is the torso.
Yes, and the acting chief did say they tried de-escalation protocols. Clearly they said, get out of the car. He comes running out with a knife. And this is one of the more interesting aspects to this as the investigation unfolds. 25-year-old male who's using a knife, and to me, when I first heard that, I just thought, it's not that common, especially in the United States where guns are readily accessible. So that's going to also go into the investigation. Is why a knife? Let's just say thank God a knife. But that's going to be clearly one of the motivations. Did he not have access to guns? Where is he coming from? So they now have the person, and that is, I mean, in a world of all bad news, often that is good news, because now they can begin to determine what his motivation was. Did anyone else know? And obviously begin to explain the kind of threat that the Capitol is under. And look, there may be different motivations for attacks on the Capitol, but the cumulative impact on the Capitol Police, as everyone has been saying, is extreme.
Oh man, I gotta get the law, dude.
Continue to protect the Capitol, but also protect the Capitol Police.
And Phil Mudd, we were talking about this earlier in the show, but the idea of violent acts inspiring other violent acts, even if the political motivations or religious motivations or terrorist motivations or no motivation that makes any sense at all, not that any of the violence ever makes sense, but based in just self-destruction or illness. Is that how serious a concern is that? So you have the January 6th insurrection, which was based on political violence. I mean, there was a clear motivation to undo the election and to stop the counting of the electors. How big a concern is it among law enforcement then? This is just going to inspire so many other people, ranging from ISIS to people who don't even have a political motivation. They're just they're going to have a violent episode, and now they're going to aim it at us.
Look, I think there's going to be a question of...
I'm gonna have to shoot you, you little asshole.
Was, for example, if the individual had mental issues that are not related to politics, you might say you can't link that to January 6th. I would not agree with that, Jake. There will be people watching this today, people watching this incident, looking what's happened to America over recent months, saying the Capitol is vulnerable. I think, this is me speaking for those kinds of people, I think that it is my responsibility to make my voice known. I don't agree with what's happening in America, and the people who came before me, regardless of whether their motivations were clear, the people who came before me showed me that the Capitol is vulnerable. I think this is as much about the target, that is, how do we think about the Capitol today versus how we might have thought of it 2 months ago, as it is about the motivation of the individual. People will say the Capitol can be breached, and I need to do something, Jake.
And Reddit, let me ask you, CNN has identified the suspect who allegedly carried this out and was killed as a result, just as he injured and killed another officer. One of the things that is very different from how we cover these kinds of incidents today in 2021 versus how we covered them just 5 years ago, 10 years ago, is we tend to name the suspect or assailant, and then we don't name him or her again, or we do so sparingly, because there was a lot of criticism, rightly so, of news media making these people famous. And the media evolved and learned from that. Most of us did anyway, at any rate. But it still inspires people, even though the fame has been taken out of it to a degree.
Twist your leg, you drunken
bastard! It can. It depends on the individual. To Phil's point, we don't know what the mental state of this guy was. All of that is yet to be determined. And if a person is resolved to do something like this, whether they're going to be famous or not.
Fucking drunken bastard, yo.
I think the important thing is, again, since we don't know, what we do know is an attack has already taken place, a major attack on the U.S. Capitol. This is reminiscent of that, although not nearly the same scale, obviously, but this is potentially a continuation of the sentiments, the politics, the ideology that drove people to commit the crimes that they committed on January 6th, and I don't think it could be ignored. It could also be something as simple as this guy wanted to end his own life, and the only way to do that is to crash into some police officers, get out of your car, and run at them with a knife. Right. I heard that discussed earlier, and that's a reality. Some people do attempt to end their lives by provoking police officers to kill them. Right. It's rare. It's unusual, but it's not out of the question.
Suicide by cop, as it's referred to. Teenage Lauren Fox is on Capitol Hill, and Lauren, this is the second time since January 6th that the Speaker of the House has asked for the flags of the Capitol to be placed at half-staff, to be lowered to half-staff, to honor a fallen Capitol police officer. She's now also reacting to this incident with her words. Tell us more.
Well, that's right. The House Speaker giving out this statement just a few minutes ago, and I want to read it. It is really offering thoughts, prayers, and an acknowledgement of what has occurred today at the U.S. Capitol. She says, quote, "Today, America's heart has been broken by the tragic and heroic death of one of our own Capitol Police heroes, Officer William Evans. He is a martyr for our democracy." She goes on to say in this statement that Congress is prepared and ready to begin an investigation into what she calls a heinous attack. And I think that is really important here, because there's what occurred today, and then there is the repercussions for what the Capitol is going to have to do to try to understand the event, but also make sure that it can't happen again in the future, Jake. And I think that is really going to be key here, because just a couple of weeks ago there was fencing on the outside perimeter of the U.S. Capitol. You could not drive up and down Constitution. This event today happened at the corner of Constitution and Delaware at the north front of the U.S. Capitol. So obviously there's going to be a question of what security needs to continue up here. And I think that what the Speaker is saying here is, not only is she grateful for the U.S. Capitol Police Force and this officer, William Evans in particular, who gave his life today, but she's arguing that Congress has to stand ready to investigate what happened, and that could mean taking actions in the future to make sure it can't happen again, Jake. But obviously, the Capitol complex, the community up here, just overwhelmed by the fact that this happened just a few months ago, and now here we are again today on this Good Friday, a holiday when lawmakers are on recess.
That's right. It's Good Friday. And Lauren, while I have you, let me just ask you, because I know working in that building, working on Capitol Hill, I remember I was a congressional reporter, and I was there on September 12th, 2001, the day after 9/11, and it was traumatic and scary and all of that, and the Capitol hadn't even been attacked at that point, although later it was with anthrax. What is it like working there, whether your own personal experience or that of people that you work with and around, ranging from members of Congress to law enforcement to other journalists? It was very scary for people on January 6th. People died that day. There's been a big effort to whitewash the horrors of January 6th, but people were killed. Police officers were severely wounded by this mob, and it was only just a few months ago, not even 3 full months ago, and now you have another attack, which must also bring back some of the horrible fears and memories of that day.
Yeah, Jake, you know, I'll tell you, I was in the Dirksen office building trying to renew my congressional ID, and I was just about to go back to my office in the U.S. Capitol building, and I was standing by this train that runs through the buildings underground, waiting for it to come, when all of a sudden an announcement came over the loudspeaker that said that there had been an event outside and that, you know, the Capitol was on lockdown, that we weren't to enter the building or exit the building, and the visceral feeling I had, I mean, I was here on January 6th, it was the exact same. My heart dropped. I mean, the feeling that you have up here on Capitol Hill, I was just walking into the building today. My husband dropped me off in a corner, basically right near where this barrier is this morning, and I just was feeling really hopeful about the fact that for the first time in a long time, it felt like things were starting to get back to normal up here. I mean, it will never be the same after January 6th, but there was just really a sense that I was starting my day, the cherry blossoms are all blooming, it's such a beautiful time to be in Washington, it's Easter weekend for those who celebrate that holiday, and, you know, I was just feeling like, okay, like, things are starting to move on, and that announcement just a couple of hours ago, I mean, that feeling, it was just like I was back standing in the basement of the Capitol on January 6th when I was being told on that day I couldn't get back to my office in the U.S. Capitol. So a lot of parallels, and I know from talking to sources, both staff and members that I've been talking to this afternoon, many people felt the exact same way about what they were feeling today, even members who weren't at the Capitol but watching from home or back in their districts.
Yeah, no, they're traumatizing without question, and of course our thoughts are with the family, friends, and colleagues of Capitol Officer Billy Evans, who was killed today in this incident. We're going to squeeze in a quick break. We're going to come back with some more breaking news. One officer, Officer Billy Evans, killed at the U.S. Capitol. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
You got a social call need to make.
Excuse me, ma'am. Did you know that Liberty Mutual customizes your car insurance so you only pay for what you need?
How many times I gotta say? I ain't an O'Driscoll.
Hey, no, Lee. No, Lee.
God damn.
Only pay for what you need.
Like one Liberty. That's right. Boy, are you high.
Morgan, you got throwing knives in your saddlebag. Doug said you might. I was asked to give them, and I'm doing you the further courtesy of telling you about it.
Next time you want to give me something, how about you give it to me instead of hiding it somewhere, hoping the opportunity comes up to mention it.
Since way back, freshness and softness you never forget. With Downy.
If I got my bearings, it's over here.
The thing about freedom is,
I know this
freedom
country.
has
Take
no
this trek
limits.
up through the rocks.
There's no such thing as too many adventures or too many unforgettable moments. There will never be too many stories to write or too many memories to make. But when it comes to a vehicle that will be there for it all, there's only one.
She won't be reasoned with.
With Infinity Now, your test drive comes to you. So you can drive one car one day, and another the next. Because when you find the kind of luxury that fits you, you'll love. Experience luxury on your terms when you purchase or lease a new Infinity online with Infinity Now. Finance any new 2020 or 2021 Infinity model with 0% APR for 72 months and total Infinity return.
When you put those building tongues to my parts.
Veterans will honorably serve, and it's made for her. She's serving now. We also make US India for military spouses and their kids.
Clean, but it'll do the job.
Get an insurance quote
Now
today.
we go left, road will take us up and round.
How could you have known? How could you possibly know what a word could do unless it was said about you? How could you know that negative comments about people of Asian descent increased 167% a week after a word was said? Now, it's too late to take it back. Now, we're just barely keeping track of over 1,000 reports of discrimination and counting, and that's just counting the ones that were reported. What about the ones that were left unsaid? How many thought this can't be happening? And if it is, should I even say anything?
Maybe I know more about you than you know about them. And I know all about them, so...
Tell us then, how are we like those mongrel dogs?
You're outlawed like them? You're out to survive like them? You live rough. You live hard. Fighting the law.
This new year,
You're out for
shine a light on the world of money
yourself.
with Green Light. Debit card begins. They'll learn to earn, save, and invest. Join more than 2 million parents and kids at greenlightcard.com.
Welcome back. We're following some breaking and tragic news. One police officer, Officer Billy Evans, has been killed at the U.S. Capitol. He's an 18-year veteran of the Capitol Police, and one of our producers on Capitol Hill, Kristen Wilson, just tweeted his photo, and she obviously knew. She said Billy was the kindest person. A suspect rammed his car into 2 officers, including Evans, and lunged at them with a knife. That suspect is also dead. This happened shortly after 1 p.m. East Coast time. Let's bring in CNN's Whitney Wild. She's near the scene. Whitney, explain how this happened for our viewers who are just tuning in.
Well, what we know is that this car, again, rammed into the officers who were at this barricade. When you come to Capitol Hill, you realize in some moments that the targets are soft because these officers are standing on the street where they can interact with pedestrians and, in this case, tragically interact with a motorist. The breaking news that we have at this moment, Jake, is that sources are telling me, my colleague Evan Perez, and my other colleague Bryn Gingras, that the suspect in this case is Noah Green. We are still trying to learn more details about this person, why he would do such a horrific act, where he's from, how old he is. All of these details we're still trying to nail down at this moment. But what we know is that, again, tragically, Officer Billy Evans lost his life. The suspect is also dead in this case. One of the questions we had was, what was the purpose? What was the motive? So earlier today we heard from both U.S. Capitol Police Chief Yovanata Pittman as well as the D.C. Police Chief here, Robert Conti. At this moment, they don't believe this person had a terrorist motive. They don't believe that this person was targeting a member of Congress. They don't believe that there is an ongoing threat. And then finally, Jake, they don't believe that this person was known to law enforcement prior to this incident. That is an important piece of information because so much of the conversation here, security-wise, has surrounded how to get better at intelligence, how to stop threats. And the context here as well, Jake, is that Capitol Police has tried to make meaningful changes. They've changed their intelligence flow here on Capitol Hill. They've tried to beef up security with the National Guard. They just took down the outer perimeter fence. They were finally feeling like they had a handle on what was going on, and yet something like this happens, and yet these officers continue to be under attack. Since January, this department has lost 3 officers. As I said, earlier in the hour, I can't stress this enough. That is so heartbreaking for any department to lose 3 at once. That's something, Jake, some departments don't see over a several year span. And now here they are, back in this familiar place that is also tragic.
Jake. Brian Sicknick, who died shortly after the insurrection. There was another officer who died by suicide in the days after the insurrection. Traumatized by the event, we're told, and now, of course, Officer Billy Evans, who our CNN Capitol Hill producer, Kristen Wilson, says was a kind person. We'll talk to her in a second. We get her on the phone. There's a picture of Officer Evans, an 18-year veteran of the force. I want to bring our law enforcement panel back, and if we can put up the graphic of the Capitol Hill grounds, the top view, the bird's eye view. I just want to explain to people. There it is. So that's the U.S. Capitol, and on the left side of your screen, that's the back. That's where the inauguration takes place of the Capitol. On the right side, that's the front where people drive in on those roads. And then you see where it says deadly incident. That's basically Constitution Avenue is on the very top of the screen, that's a bunch of Senate office buildings lined Constitution Avenue. Anybody can drive down Constitution Avenue. You can't turn, when you turn into where the deadly incident is, there is a police kiosk and a barricade. Years ago, the barricades were almost never up, but now they are regularly up. And apparently, this individual, the suspect who we have identified, turned into that part of the Capitol grounds, the Senate side of the Capitol, the top of the screens, the Senate side, and the House side. And that's
where we do this again.
And Julia Kayyem, it was just weeks ago, that members of Congress were complaining about all of the fencing surrounding the Capitol that had been put up there after January 6th. And look, I understand it. Nobody wants to feel like they're living in the green zone in Baghdad, in a war zone. And this is the people's house. People are supposed to be able to walk in and walk out, talk to their member of Congress, etc. I get the idea, but this is exactly the kind of thing that law enforcement was worried about happening.
Exactly. So it's too early to make a judgment call about what the security assessment should be around the Capitol right now. So lots of people, some of them with political motives, are saying bring everything down. Others are saying put more up. You know, basically this is going to take an honest accounting of what the threats are and where we need people. So the question I do have is, what was the security posture today that was likely in response to January 6th? In other words, were there more police officers there? Because what happened today was thwarting something that could have been worse, right? The car gets in, rams other pedestrians, even if they don't get a congressperson. So was there more security because of January 6th, and do we want to keep that up? And one thing I want to say about the slain officer, he was from an emergency management division. That may mean not much to anyone, but what that means is that he probably generally was not patrol, nor intelligent. So it may mean that they were moving lots of people, lots of Capitol Police, to try to protect the perimeter, simply in response to maybe not a specific threat, but an intelligence threat. So these are the kinds of questions that we cannot answer at this moment, but certainly cannot be answered by congressmen and who are making assessments about what the security should look like. This has to be a thorough, objective law enforcement review.
I want to bring in CNN Capitol Hill producer Kristen Wilson, who I've known for years. Kristen, you and I would interact before I was at CNN when I worked on Capitol Hill, and you really get to know the Capitol Hill police officers that you see day in, day out. Some are friendly, some less so. You went on Twitter and you say that Officer Billy Evans, who was killed today, you say he was the kindest person. Tell us whatever you know, even if it's just superficial niceties. We'd like to hear about this man.
Well, in the news, that there isn't going to be work with family happening. So it's a tiny family up there. You know, people are walking in, they're in the Senate side, you see them, sometimes it's inside, sometimes it's outside. Always have, times were in the morning when he's some sort of break, because I think he always knows he goes to me and some of us see all the time. Why are you here so late? Why are you coming in so early? Don't you have family? Don't you have somewhere to go? Just in this trouble. Terrible jokes, bad jokes, like my favorite. I mean, there was one day we were outside. It was miserably cold. We're standing out there. It's just like, you have weather. That's really not kind of like perfect weather. Just had a good time with you. I don't know. I never unkind word. It's a nice kind word for everybody, whether it was staff walking in, or some listener, or senator, nice person, kind person. It's some hurt. They all hurt. It doesn't hurt.
Yeah, and it's just, it's a tough business, politics and journalism and law enforcement. Not the same thing, obviously, law enforcement is tough, but they're serious businesses, and to have somebody who's trying to brighten the day, somebody that they're charged with protecting, I mean, that's special, and there are a bunch of Capitol officers are like that, I should say. There are a bunch of them who work really hard and are really kind and pleasant to be around. And it's a real loss, and it's been so rough for that family, the Capitol Hill family, but especially the Capitol Police family this year because of the loss of now 3 officers. Officer Sicknick killed in the line of duty January 6th, the officer who died by suicide shortly thereafter, and now Officer Billy Evans.
Yeah, and I mean, these guys, you know, they're taking it hard. You know, I've talked a lot to the Capitol Police today, and these guys are friends, and you know, again, we see them all the time, and they're just
shut up, bitch.
Wounded and haunted. It's just like one more they have to bear. I think.
Since I gotta pay all the dues, and most of the dues, yeah, be holding shit out.
A little bit normal, and the fencing was coming down. It's just a hit that it's just going to hurt the whole family, Capitol Police family, and everybody who's up here. It's just a tough one.
All right, well, Kristen, thank you so much for calling in and sharing your experiences with Officer Billy Evans. He sounds like a special guy, and to people who knew him better, his friends and family, obviously, we would love to honor him on CNN. So reach out to us, let us know when a good time to talk would be, because he deserves to be remembered. His name deserves to be made famous, not his family. We're going to squeeze in another quick break. We'll have the latest on the investigation next.
Help your neighbors in need with Feeding America.
Life is sometimes hard. Sometimes we don't have as much. The food bank is a place where my family gets help getting food.
With Infinity Now, your test drive comes to you. So you can drive one car one day, and another the next.
No, I didn't.
Because when you find the kind of luxury that fits you, you'll know. Experience luxury on your terms when you purchase or lease a new Infinity online with Infinity Now. Finance any new 2020 or 2021 Infinity model at 0% APR for 72 months at your local Infinity retailer.
American Sale, we're known for best selection of foods, play, adventure, hot dogs, and grills. Everything you need for your outdoor
Tomo just was gonna lose his
More
mind about this.
importantly, it's the quality of the products we sell.
So I'm running you now.
Can answer any of your questions. And right now, you can save up to 50%, and we'll pay your sales tax. Or get 0% financing and get a low price.
Come on, let's get the
At
camp.
American Sale, we're open, so come visit us or visit us online. American Sale. Premium, fun home.
I'll check it.
With Infinity Now, your test drive comes to you. Because when you find the kind of luxury that fits you, you'll know. There's a new way to buy an Infinity from anywhere. That's Infinity Now.
Buyers and sellers are connected by brokers.
México nos entregó para ser los mejores.
My brother will escort the load from start to finish.
Estamos picando caro.
What stands behind the yard sign of an ADT home? It's your world, safer and more secure against the unknown and unimaginable. With tested, trusted, 24/7 protection and a system we help you customize with video doorbells, indoor and outdoor cameras, locks and lights, carbon monoxide detection, and fire and smoke alarms. Protect now, pay later with 0 down and 100% real protection. Call 1-800-ADT ASAP.
Dad, it's a video call. Hold the phone in front of you. Get Mom.
Power E-Trade gives you an award-winning app with 24/7 support when you need it the most. Don't get mad. Get E-Trade and start trading today.
Which were shot. Then, Beulah Bay and an all-white jury took the Klan down. The People versus the Klan, premiere Sunday, April 11th at 9.
We're going to continue to monitor the breaking tragic news out of Washington. Capitol Police Officer Billy Evans killed in the line of duty after a suspect rammed his car into him and another officer outside the Capitol, lunging at them with a knife. We're going to keep an eye on that, but we have to tell you about this shocking story and bring this shocking story from the world lead to you right now. The Ethiopian government is denying that its soldiers are responsible for war crimes committed in their own country, but new video obtained by CNN will make that hard to maintain. The video is from Ethiopia's Tigray region, where a civil war is raging, and what a whistleblower captured goes way beyond conflict. The video shows Ethiopian soldiers executing unarmed young men. And CNN's Nima Albagir and team collaborated with Amnesty International to investigate this video, a warning. What we're about to play is graphic and gruesome, but it's also far too atrocious to ignore.
You are watching footage filmed by a soldier-turned-whistleblower, now in hiding. This video was obtained by a pro-Tigray media organization based in the US. The video you're watching will show these Ethiopian soldiers execute these men. A war crime. The Ethiopian government has waged war against Tigray's ousted regional leaders for the last 5 months, with the help of neighboring Eritrea. Ethiopia has implied the atrocities in Tigray are mainly Eritrea's doing. That's not true, and here's why. We know these are Ethiopian soldiers because of the Ethiopian flag on their shoulders here and here. Examining details of the stitching, color, and camouflage patterns, military experts confirm to us that the uniforms match those of the Ethiopian army. In addition, the soldiers are speaking Amharic, the official language of the Ethiopian Federal Army, distinct from the local language. We also know the location by analyzing the video and geolocating the footage. We know it's in central Tigray by the mountain range